Good evening. I want to welcome you to the Wednesday, October 12th, 2022 regular meeting of the Palm Springs Planning Commission. Can I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Alain?
Here.
Commissioner Irvin? Commissioner Irvin? I know you're here somewhere. Okay.
Oh, he's here.
Okay. Commissioner Hirschbein?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Here.
Vice Chair Roberts?
Present.
Chair Womack?
Present.
7 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I have a report on the posting of the agenda?
Yes, Madam Chair and Planning Commissioners, good evening. Our agenda was posted on Thursday, October 6th, and has been posted in accordance with state law and city policy. Thank you.
We are at the acceptance of the agenda, and I wanted to suggest a change, which is the majority of members of the public who are here on item 2B, Las Palmas LLC. And I would like to move that up to the first item on the agenda to accommodate the public. Is there a motion to accept the altered agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now we are at public comments. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the Planning Commission on consent calendar and other items of general interest in the subject matter jurisdiction of the Commission. Please note that the Planning Commission cannot take action on items not posted on our agenda. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. Testimony on for public hearings may be offered at this time or at the time of the hearing. Members who would like to comment on items 1A, which is the consent calendar, or 4A, which is Avalon 1150, should do so under this portion of the agenda. Are there members of the public who would like to speak?
Yes, I would like to speak, please.
Can you give us your name and address the commission?
Absolutely. My name is Bruce Younger. I'm a resident on Ambassador Drive in the Miralon development. I wish to speak on agenda item 4A. While I completely support the development as proposed by the developer and look forward to it being constructed, I do want to bring attention to an item that is impacting the existing residents here within the development, and that is the matter of egress and access into this property. Right now, there are only 2 main entrances. One is the main entrance gate off of Sunrise Parkway, which empties out to Indian Avenue. The other one is a residents-only gate, which is on the west side of the development, and that is a one-way exit that opens between Rosa Parks Road and Corazon. And the only way to get to downtown Palm Springs from that exit is to make a U-turn on Indian Canyon, and that is often confronted with heavy southbound traffic traveling at high speed. It's a very dangerous U-turn that people are making constantly, and these 2 exits both exit into Indian Avenue. It is our only egress out of this entire development right now. There is, if there's an emergency, accident, whatever on Indian Avenue and it's closed, we have literally no way out of the development here. There is an existing road that is planned, or an existing gate that's planned off of Avenida Caballeros, and that is right in the center of the development. That road and curb is in completely at this time. The only thing it's gated off, it's fenced off at the development line. That is a planned future gate, and most of the development that's built now, the residents live very close proximity to that future gate. The developer is putting that development of that gate on the back burner at this time, and it's probably looking like years before they're going to proceed with it. Most of us who bought here early were really anticipating that gate to be opened up shortly as soon as the homes were built, and we're finding out that's not the plan. So we would really like to urge the Planning Commission at any opportunities that they can to encourage the developer to move the implementation of that residence gate on Avenida Caballeros up in their schedule, because it's right now it's a health and safety issue for all of our residents here, of which there's a couple of hundred already, to go onto Indian Avenue as the sole way out of this development. And we would request that you look at any possible way to make this a condition of any future permissions or permits to be issued for the development, and in any way that you can to expedite the construction of that gate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak?
Madam Chair, I'm not seeing anyone with their hand raised in the audience.
Thank you. Last chance, if anybody wishes to speak. The public hearing is closed. And we will move on to the consent calendar. It's item 1A. It's the approval of the minutes of June 8th, 2022. Commissioner Hirschbein.
I'm going to recuse since I was absent.
I need to recuse as well.
Okay, can I have a motion or their comments? Seeing no comments, I'll make the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously with 2 abstentions. Okay, moving right along to the first item, item 2B, 12 at Las Palmas LLC. Previously, Yokang Zhao for a conditional use permit, major development permit, and tentative tract map to construct a 12-unit multiple family residential development consisting of 4 sale condos on a 0.95 acre site located at 1424 Camino Norte. Can we have a staff report, please?
Yes, good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So if I can please ask for your indulgence to share my screen and bring the item to the screen.
Edward, you still have 2 items on the screen.
Oh, really? What about now?
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Once again, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So the item you have before you now consists of 3 different types of application, and it is for the construction of 12 multi-family residential units at a currently undeveloped parcel that is located on North Palm Canyon and Stevens Road. So again, what is before you, the scope of your review tonight is the development permit and then the CUP, and of course the tentative tract map for the development of this proposal. The architectural design, the review, the architectural review and the design, colors and material, and then the landscaping will be presented to the ARC for final review and approval. So the type of development that is being proposed will range in size from 2,200 to 2,700 square foot. And then the mass and scale will consist of 2- and 3-story buildings and accessory dwelling units in front of the 3-story buildings along North Palm Canyon. They will mostly consist of 3 bedroom units. 11 of the 12 units will be 3-bedroom units, and 1 will be 4-bedroom units. One of the issues that we've been discussing with the applicant is the proposal of a gate to be installed along Camino Norte. And as we have explained to the applicant, the general plan really does not discourage or not permit the installation of gate. It says that it shall not be encouraged. However, on a case-by-case basis, the Planning Commission has approved gates in some developments within the city. And so that will be before you tonight as well. Now, this is the area photograph of the area in question. So this undeveloped parcel right here, again, it is bordered by North Palm Canyon to the east and then Camino Norte to the west. The area is currently undeveloped. It is also surrounded by an existing building to the south of it and an undeveloped parcel to the north of it, which you, if you recall, you recently approved an affordable housing project to this site. So here is just a rendering of the front elevation and then on the interior of the proposal. We'll go back, we'll go more into this as I show you the slides. This is the site plan layout, which is really before you tonight. So you'll be looking at the site plan design. So the way it is laid out, it will have 8 structures on the front, and these all will be 3-story buildings. In front of those will be 8 accessory units belonging to each of the main units here. And then to the west of it are 4 additional units, which will all be 2-story building. This is an additional schematic of the first floor plan of the site plan. And this next slide shows.
Can you go back to that one for a moment?
This one right here?
Yes. So all of the garage, not all of the garages are 2-car.
They are all 2-car. So, yeah, so all of this one here, yeah, all of the ones in the back have 2-car garages. I can see 3 of them does have a 1-car garage and then additional enclosed garages to the west of this.
Could you go back to the previous slide for a minute?
This one?
Yes. The plans to the north of the property, is that what we approved for the affordable housing?
Yes, that was what I mentioned earlier on. That's the affordable housing that was recently approved by the Planning Commission.
So that's what you're showing there. Okay, thanks.
This is the floor plan of the 3rd floor. And here I have some elevations of the exterior, the exterior drawing. So to the very top, you have the east elevation, and then to the side of it, you have the south elevation, and of course, the samples of the color materials. And there are additional elevation drawings showing the west and the north elevations. These are all contained in the exhibits that you have. And these are additional elevation drawing that shows the height and the section drawings of the buildings. And this is just a schematic drawing of the roof plan. Here is the renderings of the development. Again, this is how it will look like from looking at it from the east section of the site, which is along North Palm Canyon. Again, what you've seen up front here are the accessory dwelling unit with clear story windows on the top, and of course, the 3-story buildings, the main units itself behind it. And this will show the west elevation on this, looking at it from Camino Norte. This is just perspective drawings and the massing drawings of the entire development.
So can you go back to that one? If that is, I think it was called the agave when it came to us in the top right. How far back is that from the street, and how much further forward does this project go?
Okay, so from Camino Norte, it is required a 25 feet setback?
No, that is, I'm not asking Camino Norte. I'm asking Palm Canyon.
Okay, so
The setback on the Agave building, I think it's still Agave. And I was wondering, it's very different than ours. So what is that setback and what is,
5 feet is required and 5 feet is what is proposed.
and what is the setback on the adjacent building?
It is the same.
No, it isn't. If you look at the drawing, it's fairly far back.
Okay, Madam Chair, which of, are you referring to one of the
Picture, the top right. And if you go to the top, the right of the top right picture.
Okay, so this is, you're talking about this is the same development that is on the top right here.
The next to it, there's a different development shown.
This one right here.
You're talking about the affordable housing?
The affordable housing, how far back is that from the street?
Oh, okay. I did not understand your question. I was responding to your questions on this. So if I could please, I have to go back to that plan. But I do have a slide to show you on that one as we move on.
Could you stay on that for a minute? Because I also have a question. When you say 5 feet, is that 5 feet from the inside sidewalk, or does that include the sidewalk? And then what happens in that 5 feet? I found that kind of difficult to discern on the drawings.
Okay. All right. So when I get to the section drawings, that will show clearly where the setbacks are taken.
Okay.
All right. Can I just finish and then we can always go back and then answer your questions. Okay. So can I move forward, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the landscape drawing that shows the landscape and of course the legend of the landscaping. And then the features such as the water features on each of the units have spools, and again, in front of it, the accessory dwellings. So this here will show the project that was just approved to the north of it. So I'm going to zoom on that right here. So I'm trying to determine, and I'm sorry if I'm a little bit slow in responding to that. I'm taking it on for another staff member, so I don't have all the details on top of my head. So I can always go back. This drawing is a little bit blurred. I can always go back and get you that, the setback on this one.
Thank you.
And so I want to talk a little bit about the density of this project. And so the general plan designation of that site is mixed use, which allows up to up to 15 to 30 dwelling units. But the HDR section of the site, because it is a split site, it's only 0.6 acres, which will allow anywhere from 9 to 18 units. The mixed use portion of it is only 0.35 acres. This will allow up to 5 units. So in all, the site could allow up to 9 to 23 units. However, as mentioned earlier, only 12 units are being proposed at this time. And this is just to show the zoning and general plan designation of the site. Again, the site to the west of it is mixed use on the general plan designation, and it is high density residential to the east of it. And the zoning designation will be R2 and C1, which is traditionally commercial, but would allow the development of a multi-family development with the approval of a conditional use permit. And then talking a little bit about the development standard, this developer is not asking for any deviation from development standard. It is in compliance with the height requirements in both C1 and R2 zones. and also the setbacks, which in C1 along North Palm Canyon only requires 5 feet setback, and on Stevens, the project does comply with it. And then on the interior separation, it does comply with it. Same thing along the Camino Norte. As a result of this, staff will be recommending approval of the development permit and then the CUP and tentative track map. That will conclude my staff report, but while you're asking questions, I can go back real quick and on file to find out the setback of the previous development that was approved to the north of this site, the affordable housing project.
Edward, also how setback are the shops at 1345, which is their neighbor to the south?
The existing building?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have that, and I'm not sure when that development was built. So, but I can guess when I look at it from the area. When I look at the area photo of it, I can make a guesstimate of it.
Okay. The matter is before the commission. If you could take the slide down temporarily until we get questions.
Yeah.
Questions, Vice Chair Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I think I'm trying to find it, but I think the building to the south is actually an office building. If I'm not mistaken.
It said the shops at 1345.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Then it probably is. So I have a number of questions about this project. So Edward, would you please put the landscape plan back up for a moment?
There we go. Is it large screen showing or?
Yeah, it's showing.
Okay.
So do I understand correctly? The only thing green on the interior of this project is the 3 trees?
So again, this is a very conceptual landscape plan. This is not the final. When it goes to the ARC, I'm very sure that those will be addressed. These are very conceptual.
Okay, so there's probably going to be other landscape.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it looks
Scanty.
a little barren and hard.
Yeah.
It's an odd shaped lot, so and it's very dense, so I can see where they're going to have challenges. What is the siding on the eastern Palm Canyon face of all those little ADUs or granny flats or whatever we're calling them? It shows, it looks like some sort of horizontal siding.
Okay. Oh, you mean the material?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah, they look like veneer rugs. I will have, and I spoke with the applicant about that earlier, so I will have him expatiate more on that.
Right, we can let the applicant describe that to us.
Correct, yes.
Okay, and I can't tell, I know you talked about the general plan's position on gates, but
Yes.
Are they requesting gates or not? I can't tell from the plan.
Oh yeah, they are requesting a gate along the Camino Norte, and in the last memo that staff sent, it included.
Oh, never mind. I see it on the rendering. I see that they want. Oh,
okay.
They're asking for a gate. Okay.
Correct.
Did they? We have criteria that we use since the general plan discourages gates on these developments. We allow them based on certain criteria. Was any criteria given? Because I didn't see any for the use of the gates.
So I paraphrased the letter that they included, and that was part of the exhibits, part of the materials that were given to the commission last week.
I saw Dennis Cunningham somewhere, and it had simply asked for gates, but there wasn't any reason. that I could see to add gates to this. But again, we can have the applicant let us know why they think they should have gates as an allowance against the general plan. And then my last question to you or Christopher is, we have a number of neighbors asking about, again, the ADUs or granny flats or whatever we're calling them, and asking to have the kitchenettes removed and this and that to try to reduce density. The state recently passed a law of encouraging ADU units as secondary units, as affordable housing, specifically for that purpose. And I wonder, as we look at plans, and I think those were targeted as opening up zoning to allow them for existing houses. In other words, to do flag lots and allow ADUs on existing properties. But in this case, the developer's coming in with the ADUs attached. And we've certainly allowed these on other developments. In fact, there's another development further north on the
Correct, the icon development.
It's the icon. I remember that very well. I was on the planning commission. I think Chairwoman served with me at that time as well. But I want to know the state's position on this. I don't think we're really allowed to discourage them or to make them not usable by eliminating the kitchens, correct?
That's correct. And perhaps we can have the city attorney I think he will be better suited to respond to that. And I do agree with you.
Okay. Yeah. And not only for this project, but for projects in the future. Because
correct.
what I understand is we are encouraging a fully useful unit, as in encouraging these as rentals for affordability.
Right. Commissioner Roberts, if I might respond as a matter of policy before maybe the city attorney weighs in, I think that the policy response is also that, the city council has determined that the city does support, ADUs in most residential circumstances in response to state law and also because of the city council's own policies. So you are correct that, these are permissible and it is very difficult to limit them. I would also add that this development is coming in at the very sort of bottom end of the density threshold that is the target in the general plan. So, any further elimination of units here would actually potentially make this development non-compliant with the general plan in terms of the density that it's proposing. So I think from staff, we're very comfortable with this density and with the ADUs that are proposed. And I'm not sure if Mr. Priest has anything to add from the legal side of things.
Well, thank you for that. That's pretty much what I thought. And it is also the policy of the Planning Commission to encourage these units. So I mostly wanted you to respond to that for the benefit of the public on that, that we don't really tinker with those. Okay, I think that concludes my questions for now. And I'll bring some of these back up when the applicant is presenting to us. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Commissioner Land has her hand up. If you could take this off the screen so that we can see the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Edward, can you help me with one of the comments? I'm looking at circulation, and one of the comments in the staff report, in the most recent staff report, dealt with traffic calming, and it said, and I quote, "Since there's no issue with pass-through traffic, calming measures are not relevant to the issue of gating this community." I'm not quite following what you're saying here. Why is there no issue with pass-through traffic? Is it just because there's going to not be a lot of vehicles coming through? Or how are we ruling out the fact that there could be an issue with pass-through traffic? And well, let me get that answered first.
Yeah, that judgment is based on the number of units. This is only a 12-unit development as opposed to a bigger development that will perhaps in the 20s or 30s that will require additional perhaps traffic calming devices or other methods of slowing down traffic. But it is just we're looking at the size and making that determination. Okay. And I've asked staff from our engineering department to also weigh in case this question were to come up. But generally, that's what we looked at. We looked at that. We looked at the traffic scoping letter that was submitted by the applicant. in the end, it was determined that does not rise to that level. And so that determination was made.
Let me follow up on that, because I might be using different terminology than you are. To me, pass-through traffic is when vehicles that are not destined for one of these 12 units are shortcutting through to get back into the Las Palmas area. And that could potentially be mitigated by speed humps so that the neighbors, this is in protection of the neighbors for the 12 units that are proposed. If they are having a problem with pass-through traffic, would speed humps be a potential solution to protect their units?
Yeah, again, I think at this point, I will call on Mr. Rick Harris from the engineering department to weigh in on that. Usually that decision comes from our engineering and public works department. So Mr. Harris, are you with us?
I am. Good evening.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, yes.
Commissioner Lane, so the city's traffic guidelines, used to be guidelines that were based on LOS, and the city adopted new standards, which are guidelines which are called the BMT guidelines, which you have to do now.
Can you explain those, say those acronyms?
Yeah, the level of service is based on a trip generation analysis that there's different trip generators based on what's being proposed. So there's different trip generators for commercial versus schools versus supermarkets and houses and this sort of thing. And that's the way that the city used to do a general traffic analysis or a scoping letter to see if it rises to any kind of level. And then recently the laws changed and you're required to now use what's called a BMT analysis, which is vehicle miles traveled. And it's an entirely different type of model that's used. In both situations, using the old LOS type system, the level of service, that's a trip generation that is less than 100 peak hours or 100 peak trips per hour, but it also has to be apartment complexes or multifamily projects that would be less than 150 units, right? But they would also have to generate 100 peak trip hours. And this project doesn't trip any of those using the old LOS system. And the new VMT system requires that it has to be a minimum of 16 multifamily unit condo type projects. And then it would still have to, trigger a certain amount of trips. And this project just doesn't get there.
Thank you. That kind of meets with my understanding that the project itself is not going to impose a burden on the neighborhood because it just won't generate that many trips.
Correct. No, there isn't any reason that you as a commission or the developer, wanted to do some kind of a traffic calming thing as an additional comment or additional condition, but that would be outside of the LOS or the BMT traffic guideline.
Okay, then the other half of my question is, if the neighborhood was interested in keeping vehicles off of Camino del Norte and from the feeder streets and forcing entrance from Palm Canyon is a heavily traveled street and at speeds that I'm not sure what it is through there, 35 maybe. I'm wondering if the configuration and the traffic counts on Palm Canyon are conducive to having more driveways to residences, or from a traffic safety standpoint, are you trying to get the driveways off of Palm Canyon and onto Camino del Norte and the side streets?
Yeah, the latter part of your question is exactly right. We're trying to eliminate many driveways on major thoroughfares.
Okay.
project has access to a secondary street or a local street or a collector street, by all means necessary, we're going to make them as their entrance.
And that greatly reduces the number of rear end accidents that you would have on Palm Canyon and increases traffic safety.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Are there any parking requirements for ADUs?
In this case, parking requirements are only calculated for the main dwellings, which is the units itself, not.
Why did you say in this case? What do you mean?
So no, no parking requirements are required when they are part of a proposed unit. So it's only for the main unit that are calculated. In other words.
Is that based on the new law that says that there are no parking requirements?
Correct, yes.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, if I could just chime in for a second on that. The way the code reads, consistent with SB 9 and the ADU laws, if you have public transit within half a mile of the project, then the ADU is not required to have any additional parking. And my understanding from staff is that this is within 1/2 mile of a bus stop, which qualifies as a public transit facility under the code.
Okay, that's good explanation. Second question is, are these ADUs accessible from Palm Canyon Drive? It looks like they are.
Yes, there's an entrance from, there's one gate, I believe, in the middle of the development that allows entrances from Palm Canyon.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Hirschbein, can I just correct that? Edward, it shows a gate from every house.
Yeah.
On the drawing.
Yeah.
Okay. To all the 8 units, that is.
All 8 units, and then the
Correct.
back
Okay.
units have a main gate.
Right. Yeah,
Thank you.
a common gate and then individual gates for each of the units that front there.
Is it Commissioner Hirschbein has the floor?
Thank you. Just so I understand, Mr. Priest, my understanding of the law, not the code, but the law governing ADUs, this is exempt from it being a condo under a HOA. Is that correct? You're
Muted.
My understanding is the ADUs as accessory to the primary units would still be subject to any HOA regulations that would bind the primary units. What I can tell you is that they do not count toward density. And so these additional units can be there, and that does not exceed any sort of density cap, and they do not require additional parking. But I do believe they're subject to HOA rules.
okay.
Mr. Hadley, if you have any additional information on that.
I don't. No, that's my understanding as well.
No, I guess my point was we're not required to approve them. It's discretionary because it's a HOA. Is that right?
Well, I believe that the zoning code does permit them.
Permits
yeah.
us, it doesn't require us to approve them.
If you cannot make the findings for the major development permit, the CUP or the TTM for some reason, as to the main project, as to the main units, then you can deny the project or condition it to address any concerns you have based on your findings. But just the fact that the ADUs are there is not a basis to deny the project, because if you approve the main 12 units, those ADUs on the 8 go along for the ride, basically. They're allowed.
Okay, thanks. That clarifies that. And staff, if you could tell me, because I had a similar concern as to Vice Chair Roberts when I saw the 3 trees in the site plan or landscape plan. You don't have to put it up because we've seen it. But if you look at the site plan or the landscape plan, virtually everything else is hardscape. So even if we said to ARC, we approve this, but we want you to provide more trees, and there's no place to put the trees, how does that work out in the process?
So there is a certain percentage of hardscape that they couldn't exceed. So if it is your direction that they add more trees or more plants or more shrubs, then they will have to limit the amount of hardscape on the development.
Even though there's no space for it because of the driveways?
They will make space. They will have to change the design in some ways.
Okay.
We always get a landscape plan with these kinds of projects to see what it looks like.
I just don't think there's any place else for those trees, but that's a comment. I've got another question about parking. Condos maybe there's not a separate condo classification in the code, but condos or multifamily housing. Is there additional guest parking required on top of the per unit requirements for parking?
Yes, so it is in this for 12 units, 3 parking spaces will be required, and it's been provided, and that's why the total parking spaces provided is 31.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions.
Are there other questions? Yes.
Yeah, just picking up on the landscape, just a question to staff. I'm assuming that street trees are going to be required along Palm Canyon and Camino Norte. Is that correct?
For sure, along Camino Norte, for Palm Springs being a major thoroughfare, I have to look into that real quick. So,
Let's say in any event, the commission can condition there to be street trees, I assume, when we get to that point in this meeting.
Yeah, it can be conditioned as long as it will be consistent, because I'm looking at the area. There are street trees inside of the property along North Palm Canyon. So the same condition will apply to this project.
Other questions? I have one for Commissioner Hirschbein.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I asked a question during your presentation and you told me to hold off and I forgot to ask that. So can you show us the section again? Because I'm confused as to where the 5 feet is. Does the 5 feet include the sidewalk? Is it from the inside edge of the sidewalk to the building, the inside edge of the sidewalk to a retaining wall? I just don't know what I've got in that 5 feet. Where is it? Is it all landscape? What is it? Can you show that to us?
Yeah, if I can go back and share the site plan, Madam Chair, is that okay with you?
Yes, please.
Am I on?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's an elevation. You said a section drawing.
Yeah, so. I'm not sure what's going on with my system. Okay, well, it's saying I'm having some technical difficulties with my computer. It's saying it's paused for whatever reason, but I can go back and check the. Okay, here we go.
In that question, Edward, it looks like the planter is 5 feet deep, and that's your setback.
That's what I'm trying to determine. So it looks as if it's from the planter to the face of the building, the accessory units. So that's where the setback is taken from. I'm gonna keep trying to share this.
L1 of their drawing shows the planters. And it looks like a double planter that's either stepping up.
Yes, there is the
It's pretty wide. It's But there's no dimensions on this?
It looks like more than 5 feet too, if you're.
Yeah, it definitely looks, it's almost as big as the ADU itself.
Yeah. And is it split
Again,
level?
Why don't we hold that question for the applicant?
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. Why don't we wait for the applicant on that?
Staff doesn't have the dimensions in front of them. I've got a couple questions for the city attorney. Just going back to the density. I know we were sued some years ago for permitting under the density. And when you showed the density required slides, it looked like the 12 was under what was required for both the if you combine the multifamily and the CUP and the commercial minimums. Are you getting the density because of the ADUs?
No, so they did not qualify for a bonus density on this one. That is just the range.
No, I'm not asking about I'm asking, it's a city attorney question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
There's a minimum density on this that looked like it was greater than 12 units when you added the two portions together.
My understanding, Madam Chair, is that the minimum density based on the zoning and general plan designations could be as low as 9 units and could permit as many as 23. That was Mr. Hadwin or Mr. Robertson. Can you confirm that? But that was my understanding, is that was the density range permitted here.
That's correct, between 9 to 23.
Yeah, so we're not underdeveloping this.
Does that include both sides? Because it looked like the 9 was just one side of the density minimum.
Yeah, that's for both sides. So on the high density residential section of it, it would allow between 9 to 18, and on the mixed use section of the split zoning, it would allow up to 15. So which then makes the range 9 to 23.
Yeah, if this were exclusively high density residential, Madam Chair, then I would agree with your premise that this site's being underdeveloped because the entire site would have to be a minimum of 15 units per acre or above. However, because we have a mixed site here and the portion that is up to 15 units under the alternate designation, the C1 designation, it averages out so that 12 units does meet at least the minimum density.
So in terms of that minimum density, we don't need the ADUs and they don't put us over the density threat. They don't put us under or over the density.
The ADUs by definition, the code don't count toward density. So they're just a wash no matter what. But the 12 main units do meet minimum density. And that's the core calculation for density here.
Okay, that answers. And this is back to Edward or to Chris. My understanding was a little garbled. Your recommendation is no gate, am I correct?
Yes, but then I left it up to the commission because you have approved gates on a case-by-case basis, but based on the case made by the applicant, I will leave that up to the commission.
But based on the cases that we've approved, so you didn't make a recommendation based on the cases, the very few cases that we've approved.
Staff's recommendation is that this does not sort of elevate to the level where a gate would be required typically. So I think what Edward is saying is the commission can certainly exercise their judgment, but staff's recommendation is that a gate is not required.
And if that's your judgment and the general plan doesn't encourage them, that's probably.
Yes, and that's what staff analysis is based on. That.
And I just wanted to make sure that you had analyzed it and you had a point of view about it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. The one question I had, and it looks to me like we had required something like a 30-foot setback at the affordable housing next door to keep the street open and activate it. Do you have that measurement right now?
Yes, I do. So I have it in front of me. Here is what the table says. So on the front yard, along Palm Canyon, they provided 10 feet. And then on the interior, they only provided, on the C1 section, they provided 3 feet. On the rear, along Cabin.
No, I'm asking about Palm Canyon.
Okay, yes.
Because it looks like it's much, when you looked at the drawing, it looked like it was much wider. And some of it may be a raised patio, but
Yeah.
what is the setback and the raised patio, the frontage, how deep is that?
Okay, so I'm looking at the table that the staff report that you approved, it is 10 feet. That's what was approved. I can share, you want me to share, I can share the screen with you.
No, but if you look at the drawings on it, we've pushed back some patios. It's much further back. We required them to do it. It's much further back from the street to activate the street. So the question is, and this is one for staff, which was, we required that of the developer next door to activate the street. And we required an attempt at commercial to activate the street. Is there any reason that staff didn't do the same thing here?
I might jump in on that. And
why were we treating one developer different than another?
right. So I think Edward may be able to provide a little more context on this. My assessment, having come into this relatively recent, is that the sites are very different. So the site that we are discussing tonight is quite a bit smaller. The orientation is different. If we were to look at a greater setback, I believe that you would end up potentially losing some units, and then we would potentially run into some density problems, as we were just discussing in terms of the density targets of the general plan. In terms of commercial uses to activate the street, I think, typically it would be our preference and priority that we activate Palm Canyon with commercial uses. But again, I think looking at the size and orientation of this lot and sort of the need for housing that was expressed by the developer and that they were responding to, I think the size of the commercial space that you're going to get on this site within the portion zoned C1 would be relatively small. And then, the parking requirements for that would further eliminate residential units and really sort of change the layout and development potential of this smaller site. So I think they're just very different sites. We had more room to play with on the site above to sort of get more out of that site than we can here.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before I open the public hearing? Seeing none, is the applicant here? You have 10 minutes to present the project.
Hello, this is Ernest Vincent. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I think Dennis Cunningham is with us. I'm not sure.
He has his hand up. Did you want him to go first, or are you going first?
Yeah, let Dennis go. Make sure he unmutes his microphone.
Mr.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Okay, my name is Dennis Cunningham, Palm Springs Modern Homes, the developer of 12 at Las Palmas. I'd like to answer a few of the questions you have had. First, the setback is 5 foot for the building to the south. That's the Verdier building. It runs from the corner of Norte to our project. I don't know the frontage, but I can't remember the frontage, but it's double, I think, what we have, and we have about 200 feet. And that's a 3-story building and has a 5-foot setback. And it's the Verdier building. It's been there for many years. The concept for the guest houses, or the ADUs as we call it, was influenced by Imperial Park South with the clear story windows, the folded plate roof, and the veneer is the same block veneer as the Imperial Park South. And so the concept is to make it look, in a sense, an homage to Imperial Park South. Let's see, what else do I have? Okay, the sidewalk is the city's, and the retaining wall is also on the city. And then 5 feet back from the retaining wall, which is a planter, is the property line. And we're an additional 5 feet back from there to the building front. So that would make us 10 feet from the face of that retaining wall planter that's existing on Palm Canyon, which we propose to keep. We met extensively on this development from the very beginning with Flynn, and unfortunately Flynn's not here this evening because he has a history on it, to develop what would work as far as everything we've talked about earlier, density and building usage and so on. Our frontage is about 200 feet, so it's a very small frontage on Palm Canyon, so that's why we felt that doing any kind of commercial really probably wouldn't work very well. We have two letters that's in, well, we have one letter in response to the gates. First, we asked for the gates. Secondly, we got a response from David with the code as such for gates. And then what we did was, and Ernie can answer that, he's on tonight with me. We sent that letter, and basically what we feel we're dealing with is a driveway. It's 150 feet deep. It only services these 12 units. And to have it ungated, and all of the parking is allotted for guest parking, and so it wouldn't create anything. It's not a flow through development, and so for that reason, we're asking for the gate. And I guess that's the only comments I have to your initial discussions, and I'm here to answer any questions you might have adding to it. Thank you.
We'll come back for questions. So stay with us, but we're going to go forward with the public hearing. You mentioned someone is working with you. Is that the project architect?
No, well, there's two people here. There's one is my partner, which is Ernie Vincent, and he can answer, I guess, an answer maybe to the gated situation and anything else if he wants to add. The architect, Renee from O2 Architects, is here with technical questions you might ask, but I think you've already covered most of that. So if Ernie wants to say something, go ahead. Other than that, we're completed our discussion until you need further. Thank you.
Yeah, if I could speak, I'll just say on the gates that in response to David Newell's correspondence, we sent in a letter, which I think Edward has included in your package. And basically our response followed the code section that David had given us, and starting with the item that controlled access is discussed. Our understanding that the history behind that is for communities to be more open to the general community and not wall themselves off. In this particular development, we have 8 of the homes on Palm Canyon with gates there with access, and 1 on Camino Norte. So 9 out of the 12 are on the perimeter. We only have 3 units that would be inside a gate. So we don't see the rationale there for requiring that we not have a gate. And if we do not have it, we feel there may be some impact on the parking in there, as well as some traffic. And as Dennis said, what we mainly have there is not a street, but a large driveway. Having the gate is not going to negatively impact any parking or traffic or anything. And it isn't going to block off any access that homeowners would need to get to Palm Canyon. So that's pretty much it for the gates.
Are you finished, or are you still speaking?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? I see John's iPad had a raised hand.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, if you identify yourself.
Yes, I'm a neighbor, and it's a really nice project. The neighborhood would like it.
Can you just identify your name, please?
Yeah, I'm Garth Gilpin. I live in the 500 foot diameter. And the neighbors in the area have a couple major concerns that I don't see addressed here. And we've written letters and I haven't seen any of the issues that we've raised been talked about. One of them is the ADU units and the sanitary conditions raised with trash. There's no place for these units to dispose of trash. If you have a kitchen, you have to have trash. And so you would have to leave the front of your unit and walk through the center of the access into the complex and go to the garage of the 8 units who own those units. And I received a letter back stating that the city had trash department has stated they would put those 3 units inside the garages. So I have a real concern about where the trash from those units is going to go, because if you're an owner of the 8 base units, you're not going to let anybody into your garage if you're gone to Canada for 6 months, and it's just an impossible situation. So the trash issue has to be addressed. The other issue is safety. The project north of it has a curve, and when that project was approved, the exit from that property was gated, and it's allowed only for emergency use of fire trucks and ambulances. And we asked the commission to please conduct a traffic study for the safety of this curve. It's a blind curve, and the time you get trucks parked in there for the neighborhood landscapers, etc., it is very dangerous. And we just asked that a study be done. The driveway is 250 feet plus, and I read the fire department codes, anything over 150 feet has to have a turnaround, and there's no turnaround there. This is a safety issue. It's a fire issue. The project needs some review by this committee for safety and sanitary issues, and we welcome the project. God, it's better than this old tree thing we've got there now. But I think the Planning Commission has to review this project in different light, other than we have 8 units in here. You also address the CC&Rs that they don't address these 8 issues, and I believe that's a bad mistake. They have to be addressed specifically as to what the CC&Rs relate to these 8 units. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. There's a gentleman with his hand raised, Paul Popowich. You're muted. You're muted.
I think you are unmuted now, Mr. Popovich.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for having a lot of us here in the community that live in the surrounding neighborhood. My name is Paul Popowich. I live basically 2 complexes away from there. And as Garth kind of mentioned, a lot of us are very concerned about certain specific things, and we welcome that project and also the neighboring project that's supposed to be scheduled, the LO, start to do groundbreaking in February. But anyhow, I'm just going to read parts of my letter. I think some of the questions and issues and concerns that I had have been somewhat addressed, but I think, there's been discussions about these guest units. The concerns I think that me and several of the other neighbors have is that some of these could be turned into vacation rentals. And, we know there's a lot of discussions here in Palm Springs. Something is going to be going to the city council in the next week or so about restricting. We've seen increased vacation rentals in this immediate community, and it's creating changes and problems. Also, some of the neighboring businesses on West Stevens on the other side, there's a popular new restaurant that is increasing traffic flow, the Trixie Motel. There's also some other commercial businesses there, and we're seeing a lot of pass-through traffic coming through the side streets. So even though there was someone, I guess, earlier that said there might be more traffic coming through, it's already coming through. And that curve is a huge safety issue. It may not be apparent from the diagrams, but a lot of us walk through there with our dogs and pets. Last week I was walking through, car just came flying through, almost ran into me. They took that sharp curve, went into the wrong lane. So I'm hoping that that space can be widened up. There's a sidewalk that just drops. And there's also, looks like they put in some underground transmission barriers. And so that kind of shortens the space as well. So I'm hoping that some of that stuff can be addressed. But I'm just looking at my letter to see if there's anything else that I'd like to kind of address. You know, I did hear some of the comments about why there's no ingress and egress off of North Palm Canyon. If you look at the property, and there's some pictures that I attached to the letter, there looks at a previous time that there was access there. That would be my preference, to keep some of the traffic off of these back streets in the surrounding neighborhood. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to speak? Mr. Silver?
Yes, I would just, I live in the same Las Siesta Villas that Paul does. And I sent a letter, which is brief, complimenting the project on providing a sidewalk in that area on Camino Norte, but asking a question about the possibility of having a southbound egress and ingress on North Palm Canyon, which I don't think would affect traffic flow, and wonder about the highway department just considering a unidirectional one that would be a right turn only. Thank you.
Thank you. Planning Director Hadwin, do you see any other members of the public who wish to speak?
I'm sorry, I see no, Madam Chair, I see no additional hands raised and no one else has signed up to speak.
Thank you. If the applicant is here and the applicant's architect, the applicant has rebuttal time. Mr. Cunningham, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal, and then if you and your architect would stay here for questions.
I don't have any rebuttal. I think we've covered everything with respect to the different concerns, and I think that we will be able to answer them along with what the commission wants to put with it. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for the applicant? Commissioner Roberts.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for staff or for the applicant. There was a question about turnaround requirements. I'm hoping staff can respond to that.
JR, I can answer that.
And this is a time for questions of the applicant.
Yes, JR, I can answer that.
Okay. Please do.
Okay, the fire department requires 150 feet maximum. We have 140 feet, and then you need to hit a turnaround. And in this case, we have a hammerhead that meets the requirements of the turnaround. And the fire department has already reviewed the project and has preliminarily approved it.
Okay, thank you for confirming that. Mr. Cunningham, this house that's attached to this complex, can you help me understand that architecturally and what the point is? It literally looks like it fell off of another project into this one.
Are you referring to lot one? I guess the individual, I could look at it as
the one that's on the western perspective, along Norte.
What I was doing, what we are doing on that, or attempting to do on that, and I think we're going to be able to accomplish it, is to create more of a single family unit that would be respondent to the neighborhood on Camino Norte, rather than have it be more of a continuation of the condominium units. It's more of an individualization and creating a individual unit as such. And with respect to falling off the truck, I'm not so sure I agree. But I think when we get through architectural review, we'll very much be able to determine what that's going to look like, I would presume.
Yeah, what I didn't say it fell off a truck. I was saying that it looked like it fell out of another project, just because
which had a truck.
Actually, it's so completely different.
I'm kidding, JR. There.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not disparaging it. I'm just saying it. I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, I was just trying to, just kind of pull it a bit away from the project and make it look a bit more in keeping with the residential units on the Norte side.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I think my other questions have been answered, so I'll wait for comments. Thank you.
Thank you, dear.
Commissioner Hirschbein.
Commissioner Hirschbein, you're muted.
Yes, I was. I'm sorry. Mr. Cunningham stated that the facades of the ADU would be block veneer or brick veneer, some sort of masonry unit. But if I look on sheet A 2.0, it looks like it's called out as gray stucco. And so is that a mistake?
Well, I would say that what we're dealing with is preliminary drawings, and there's overlap, I'm sure. But remember, if you would, when I first mentioned that the concept is from Imperial Park South, which is the Berkus project that was built in the late 60s. And so that's where our inspiration comes from. And that is that's a block veneer with standoffs, and it's painted white with the clear story windows and the folded plate roof. So we're in this kind of, presenting a bit of an homage to that development, which is in keeping with the Palm Springs mid-century look as such, without overemphasizing a mid-century copy. So that's hopefully answered your question.
Well, I understand all that, but your drawing does not comply with what you stated. And so I'm just asking, was that a mistake on the drawings?
Yeah. It may very well be, and that will be clarified, and I thank you for that for the architectural review.
Thank you. Oh, I had another question. What is the opportunity, given the existing site plan, for some more trees? And I was just, because that was a concern of Vice Chair Roberts and myself. And I'm looking at the schematic design site plan. I think maybe there's an opportunity to do street trees in that what amounts to about a 10-foot planter area. Would that be a possibility? Because I don't really see a lot of other tree opportunities in the site plan.
Again, I would like to emphasize that it's a preliminary design to get us started and have you all have a look at it and comment on what you have, and I appreciate it. And the answer to that would be yes, that we've always been cognizant of trees and planting and so on in our past developments in Palm Springs, and this one as well. And so as we continue refining with architecture review, I presume, and so on, we would be working with what we could do to add to the landscape program.
So just my concern is that we say that's fine, we send it to ARC, there's no room for any more trees, it comes back to us. It's early in the process, so that's actually something I'd like to know. If you can't give it to us now, I get it, but it's disappointing.
Well, again, we'll be taking into consideration any opportunity we have to add additional landscaping, trees, and so on. And again, this is preliminary to start with, and we're not wanting to take anything away from the project. If anything, we would add. And if we can find opportunities, we will. I think on the perimeters, we have opportunity between us and the 71 units to soften it up, because that is a pretty large project that's adjacent to us, as well as opportunities on Palm Canyon in that planter, raised planter bed, which is really quite an attractive placement that's been there historically and adds to some texture. So I guess then the further answers, we'll do what we can to add more and make it a cohesive landscape project.
Are there other questions? I have some if the commission is finished with questions. Can you respond to the question of trash and how you're going to handle trash from the ADU units? Apparently, I'm sure there won't be street pickup on Palm Canyon.
No, that's correct. I know we've talked about the concept that these may end up being AD units. They won't necessarily be AD units, but I fully appreciate the Planning Commission saying, okay, what if they all are? And so if they are, there's an accommodation as you come in through the gate in the front for the trash, and also whoever rents the unit or keeps the unit is going to have to take into consideration how they're going to deal with the trash on their AD unit on their property. And also the city with the waste management who works, I think it's waste management or Palm Springs disposal, we will be working with them in process like we always do on a project of how exactly they're going to deal with us, with the trash, with the recommendations. And we will be meeting with Palm Desert Disposal as we move along in the process to make sure that we accommodate trash.
The second question is, what have you thought about vacation rentals and CCNRs? What kind of requirement have you thought through? What?
Yes, we have. We have in our other developments that we've built as well as this one, that we would comply to whatever the city requirement is regarding vacation rental at any given time going forward. I know we're in an interesting time with respect to vacation rentals, and the city's going to make their decisions, which will take into consideration our development as well as any other house or condominium project or whatever within the city. So we will defer to whatever the city requirements will be going forward.
You basically, you're always, well, as an HOA, you might not have, I'm assuming all of the units will be inside the HOA?
That's correct.
Including the one that's on the street?
That's correct.
Okay. So one thing, as you're going forward with this, you need to really think through what you're going to put in your CCNRs.
And we will, and we always have in the past in the 500 or so units that we've built within Palm Springs over the last 25 years, we've always taken into consideration the CCNRs with consideration to rentals. And again, agreeing with whatever the city's requirements are with respect to that.
The city doesn't, that's something I'll deal with later. I don't believe the city has requirements. And can you tell me, when you add the setback from the street, the masonry wall, and to your front yard, what exactly is that depth?
Well, as I mentioned earlier,
here, can she tell us?
Well, so what I mentioned earlier, when you see the development or the project as it stands right now, there's a sidewalk, and that belongs to the city, and then there's the retaining wall, which is also on city property. And then you go back 5 feet from the top of that retaining wall, and that would be the property line. And then you go another 5 feet, and that's the building. So it would physically be 10 feet back from the retaining wall that you see existing on Palm Canyon right now. And it would be the same frontage as the Berdier building, the same setback as the Berdier building, which is a fairly substantial building. I think you agree. That is on our south line, east and south line.
So you're cutting steps into that retaining wall for the 8 units?
The steps have, there are steps there, and we'll be adjusting the steps accordingly to accommodate the entrance to each of the units, yes.
Does anybody have any technical questions for the architect? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
The matter is before the commission for comment. And I'm just going to go around to everybody, starting with Vice Chair Roberts, and get comments first before we end up with discussion and motions.
Thanks. I'll be brief. I don't think there's a compelling argument to not have gates. In the past, it was because it was on a major thoroughfare and it might affect parking, or because it was focused, it was a senior development and we wanted to add a layer of security. There was other criteria that we've used. I don't see them here. I worry about setting precedent by allowing gates without a specific criteria. I'd like to, as we send this to the AAC, I'd like them to focus a lot on the landscaping for this project, both out on Palm Canyon and within the development. Clearly, we're getting something that isn't fully worked out there, so I hope they will focus on it. It seems to me most other questions have been asked and answered properly. With respect to vacation rentals, the way that policy is currently written is that HOAs decide. So new condos are being developed, some that allow for vacation rentals. Most don't. And at the time these were written, it was decided that we leave that with HOAs to decide. So, yeah, we simply may never know whether vacation rentals are going to be allowed or not. I would also like the AAC to look at this house. I very much respect the developer's response that this house, this single family large house, which has no architectural connection to the development, although being part of the development, is supposed to nod to other houses or to the streetscape. I just don't see it. I'd like AAC to pay attention to that. And I think most of the concerns have been responded to well. I listened carefully to the concerns of the neighbors about trip generation and traffic. We're talking 12 units. I don't think it's going to add a significant amount of traffic to this area. Many condos are used as second homes. It's rare in a development like this where you see a lot of parking or a lot of cars. I think the impacts overall are going to be minimal to the rest of the neighborhood. And those are my comments. You're muted, Cheryl.
Sorry, my dog has been barking. Let me go to Commissioner Alayan. Would you like to make comments?
Yes, I will. I echo some of the concerns of the vice chair. And more specifically, if I'm looking at the findings that we need to make for this project, I have difficulty making findings number 1, number 4, and number 5. Number 1 is because what's addressed here is the consistency with the general plan, but this only discusses the general plan in terms of densities. And the general plan is more than just the densities. In part, the general plan is the gated communities. And I have the same concerns that many of us have spoken about on other projects. I don't believe that this meets the threshold for having a gated community. And I am not a proponent of adding more of them in particular in our downtown areas, right along the main streets, where we are trying to be a community, a village. We're trying to be approachable and accessible. And I believe that the gates obviate that. The condition or the finding number 4, that the proposed height and massing of the project is consistent with the and compatible with the adjacent development. The massing of this building, and maybe this needs to go somewhere else and under this finding, from the street is, from Palm Canyon, is very solid. It's very...
We're losing you.
I think we lost her.
I think we did. I'm going to move to another commissioner and then come back to Commissioner Land. I am going to... would somebody else like to speak? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, many of my comments have already been addressed by other commissioners, but I think the site is, first of all, I generally support this project, but I think it's woefully devoid of landscaping, especially street trees. And I think there needs to be found a way to fit street trees in, whether they're in the right of way along Palm Canyon or on the property. It seems like there is room. I think any motion that we would be inclined to make should include a condition regarding that, the Architectural Review Committee, as well as on Camino Norte, the trees as well. I believe that the facades along Palm Canyon are too blank, and they need some sort of articulation or fenestration, whether there's even faux windows or something. I think that's going to be, well, architecturally, the folded plate look is interesting and carries on some of the themes of other architecture in the city. I think the windowless walls at street level are going to be cold and uninviting for people along Palm Canyon sidewalk. I think there's a solution to deal with that. Regarding the gate, I also prefer to see no gate. I don't see a rationale to support special consideration for a gate along Camino Norte. Those are my main comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Land is back with us. If you'd like to continue.
I would, and I'm not sure quite where I dropped off. I believe that I was talking about the massing of the building and how I don't believe it is consistent with its neighbor that has been approved to the north, which is much more open and transparent. I believe that this presents as a solid wall essentially to the community. And finally, the condition number, it's condition number 5. I might have said 6 before, but number 5, I don't believe that the setbacks of this building are consistent with what the setbacks are of the adjacent developments and proposed approved developments. And for those reasons, I am not comfortable with the project as it is. I'm also concerned about the lack of landscaping. I think that is a detractor to not just the development itself, but to the community surrounding it.
Thank you. Commissioner Maruzzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Just in general, I believe gates are friendly, especially for multifamily developments. And there was a point made by, I guess, the applicant that a lot of single family homes in the neighborhood have gates. Those are single family homes. When you were talking about multifamily development, especially ones that you can see from the street, I think that gates really are just not appropriate. A lot of good points have been raised. The setback issue, because the building to the south has the same setbacks as this proposal, not certainly the one to the north. That doesn't bother me so much. And the Imperial South homage, I mean, there are windows, they're all clerestory windows. I think I'm okay with that too. That's it.
Commissioner Irvin?
Yeah, so the other commissioners have made some very valid and important comments. So I will also keep my response very short and say that I'm in support of what the fellow commissioners have said, and also I am not in support of the gate.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Okay, not in support of the gate, in support of more landscaping, and actually I'd like to see it before we send it on to ARC, because I don't believe that there's a lot of opportunity given the existing site plan. I think in the past, we have required CC&Rs to either prohibit or allow vacation rentals. And I think if we want to comply with state guidelines and also the city's desire to create affordable housing, and if it's allowed under our ability to require these things, and we could ask Mr. Priestess, I would require that these are prohibited, these ADUs or guest suites, however you want to call them, prohibited from renting out for less than 30 days. If we can do that, I would support that as a condition of approval. I also have concern about garbage. To say what's up to the guy that rents it, that's kind of like, you're designing this project from scratch. It's not like you're trying to fit an existing unit into a tenement or something. They got to come up with a way to deal with it. I don't know what it is. It may be that there's a dumpster out by the gate that the people in the ADUs can access, although it's kind of far away, or maybe there's another option for a dumpster location. But to just say, oh, it's up to the guy that rents it to figure out what he's going to do with his garbage when there's no real solution to that on site is not an answer. I'd like to make it a requirement of approval, if we do approve, that it is a CMU or masonry unit on that facade, because if it is stucco, it just falls completely flat. And that is what the drawings currently call for. So like I said, it might be a mistake, I don't know, but it can't be that with approval. It has to be a CMU or masonry. And then I'd like to direct ARC to make sure that the detailing on the clear story complies with the rendering, because that makes all the difference in the world as to how this project presents to the public right away. And in this case, it's very, very important. I guess I don't share so much concern about that large unit being of a different architectural vocabulary. I understand what Vice Chair Roberts is saying. And I could go either way on that one. And I think that's it. So it's CC&Rs, landscape. Oh, I was gonna say traffic calming. If any place needs traffic calming, according to these comments we've heard from the public, it's the street, not within the development itself. So maybe that's something engineering, the developer and the neighbors could work on.
Thank you. I'm going to start with landscape. I've never seen a project come to us for this without a landscape plan, and therefore I don't think this is ready to go forward. I wouldn't move it forward. I would like to see it come back again. Gates, I think we've all expressed that we don't believe this meets the conditions for a gate. If there were, I think trash is important, and I think they have to have a plan for how they're going to deal with trash as they come to us and then go on to architectural advisory or architectural review. So I think that needs to come back. I think the project feels walled off from the street. It feels like it's a massive wall. It isn't light like the project next door. And that can possibly be cured with landscape, very mature, lush landscape in that area. I would agree that if it's going to be, that if they're going to show us what they showed, I would like to see windows in that as well. So it doesn't, and it's, since it's further back from the street, I think there could be windows on that streetscape. But I don't think this is ready. I think a project coming to us where they say it's very preliminary, well, it's a little too preliminary for me right now to say yes to it. And I have been concerned about, I think I'm a little more sanguine now that I know that it's further back from the street than the minimum 5 feet. But I want to know what's being done in that area to soften this building. And I agree with Commissioner Roberts. I have concerns about the way the back building looks. And I don't think they should be presenting it to us as maybe we'll do this and maybe we'll do that at this stage. And trash is important. So if I were to make a motion, it would be to continue. I don't know if there's any support for that.
I would support that motion. I would second that motion.
And continue with conditions that they come back with a full landscape plan. They articulate what they're going to be doing, a better articulation and better drawings in the front, so we can see the placement of the building against the street and against the other 2 buildings that are going to be there. That they determine, they have some determination, some initial determination of what they're going to do with the back building. And they resolve the trash issue.
And I would suggest that we don't limit it to specific items that we want them to address. I think they should take a listen to everything that they've heard and address, enhance their design based upon the input they've received from the commission, rather than just checking boxes.
I'll second that I'll agree to that. Discussion? Or should I call the question? Vice Chair Robert.
I just want to be clear on this, because the last direction from Commissioner Olayan said, if I understood her properly, we want them to listen to all the comments made. We don't all agree on all comments. And I think that's kind of unfair to an applicant. I think we need to either agree or disagree on specific areas of concern, like trash, landscape, Palm Canyon facade. And if we want to add some others, let's do that. Let's be specific about it if we're going to have them come back.
So you started to list the areas, finish them.
Well, those are the areas that I heard of greatest concern. Was landscape for all of us, which would also kind of, and to more clearly define the facade on North Palm Canyon. What is it? Is it stucco? Is it block? And I think with the right landscaping, that facade will be fine. I'm trying to think of what else there was. We all agreed no gates.
I'd be opposed to saying stucco. I want the direction to be block or CMU or a masonry unit.
Okay. I think that's fine, that we want to get away from a stucco finish. Yep. Was there anything else specific that we wanted them to come back with?
A better articulation of the back building.
Better articulation or better definition?
Better definition.
Yeah, that's a strange one because the argument that was made is hard to confirm other than a site visit. And I haven't made a site visit to this. That rear house, which is more of an arts and crafts or Spanish design, fits in better with that neighborhood. So if they are going to stand by that, that's okay, but maybe they can show us images of why that works, of why they made those decisions. I've just never seen a development, a very specific, very modern development come through with a very traditional looking house dropped into it. So hopefully they can help us understand that better. So more define the reasoning for a major architectural break on one house within the development.
And I would ask that I heard at least three of us, 3 or 4, talk about concern about the relatively impervious facade on the east side and some way to lighten that up. I heard somebody suggest that glazing. I don't think that adding more landscaping and making an even more impervious facade is going to be sufficient to address my concerns. But that's why I had actually wanted to be a little bit looser and let the architectural team take a look at it, listen to the concerns, and come back. I don't want to dictate how they solve it, what material they use, but.
So it sounds like that direction is that the developer take another look at the Palm Canyon facade, exactly. so that it's not so relentless.
Yes, and so that it be better reflective of the setting in which it is, including its neighbors.
And that it activates the street.
I would just say if you look at the Rive, which has similar sorts of architectural forms, there's a rhythm set up, but then they break the rhythm with an element, be it a opening or a window, but it breaks it up. It makes it a little more dynamic rather than static, which is, I think, what a lot of people are looking at, referring to.
Madam Chair. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
Is there a reason for you to come into this right now?
Oh, Madam Chair, I was just going to address a quick comment from Commissioner Hirschbein, and given that the discussion is.
We'll do that later.
CNRs
were not a major discussion in this, other than asking if they had made a decision as to which way they would go. I don't believe that that was raised by more than one of the commissioners.
Very well.
I think we have a motion. Can we call the question?
Do we have a date?
Yeah. Madam Chair, may I ask that in order to continue to a date certain, you may want to ask the architect and the applicant how long it may take them to make all those revisions so that we can set a date certain for the continuation. Thank you.
If the applicant, Mr. Cunningham, would you like to respond?
When do you want to come back?
30 days. 30 days?
30 days.
Madam Chair, staff would recommend that December 14 as the next hearing date.
December 14th it is.
Thank you for your consideration.
Commissioner Roberts, would you read back the motion to us?
Certainly with some help.
No,
So
you or the planning director. We can have the planning director, we'll put him to work.
Did you get all that?
I'll try. So I believe, Madam Chair, that we have a motion to continue to date certain on December 14th to allow the applicant to return with a better formulated landscape plan, with drawings that reconsider the Palm Canyon facade, to consider activating the frontage along Palm Canyon, with a plan for trash and waste disposal specifically for the ADUs, and with a plan that reflects no gate. Does that capture everything? Did I miss something?
We would want to have a better definition of the back building, showing
or understanding.
Showing. Sorry.
I was just going to say we would like to have a better understanding of why that facade or architectural style dramatically leaves the modern style and goes into something more derivative.
Okay.
And in terms of the landscape plan, that includes both the site and the street trees on, I think, all three streets. It should also show the sidewalks. I believe they're adding a sidewalk in the back.
I've added that.
Does that satisfy everybody's concerns? Before we finish, Mr. Priest wanted to speak about the vacation rental issue. And I might speak for a second. The council hasn't taken a position on this. The only position I've heard is that there needs to be a decision before as to which way they're going to go on vacation rentals or rentals of the units themselves, the ADUs. That's their, from council's perspective right now, that's their decision. Am I correct, Mr. Priest?
Yes, that's correct, Madam Chair. That's what I was going to mention earlier, is I don't believe the commission can condition about short-term rentals in this case. That would be a policy call of the council.
And that we've done it before doesn't allow us to do it now. Can you call the roll, please?
Before I do, so the continue to date certain, is that 2 months out or 1 month out?
December 14th, I believe, 1 month.
Okay, so it's 2 months. So December is 2 months. Okay, and who was the second on this?
And why does the applicant ask for 1 month? Staff
So,
suggested 2. Is that the next available spot?
Yeah,
Yes.
Madam Chair, 30 days takes us to past our November 9th, which is our only hearing in November. And we also have some staff absences and other priorities to sort of work around. So we do believe December 14th is the soonest we can bring it back.
Thank you.
And who's the second on this?
I was.
Commissioner Clayen.
Chair Womack?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Leyen?
Yes.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Roberts?
Yes.
Thank you. That motion passes unanimously. What I would suggest is this will probably be I think the longest hearing we have tonight. And I would like to propose a 10-minute break. A 10-minute break. Is anybody else in need of a break?
It's fine. Let's do it.
Okay. We'll reconvene at 7:30. else? And the next item on our agenda is 2A, Insight Property Group for a major development permit to construct a 127,200 square foot storage facility on an undeveloped parcel approximately 6.43 acres in size at 400 West San Rafael Drive. Staff report, please.
Give me a second. You can see the screen, correct?
Yes, thank you.
All right, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. The applicant is proposing a 3-story, 127,000 square foot self-storage facility on a 6.43 acre parcel within the College Desert Park specific plan. The project site is highlighted in yellow, and prior to construction will require a parcel merger with our engineering department to merge the two parcels into one lot. The project site is surrounded by industrial uses on the east and northwest sides, multifamily residential on the southwest side, and vacant uses on the north and south.
Alex, before you do that, can you go back to the other slide and tell us how close it is to the proposed navigation center?
Oh, I do not have that information. I can get it for you though.
Thank you.
So the site will front both West San Rafael and West Radio Road. Ingress and Egress will take place off West San Rafael with an exit only on West Radio Road. The development of this project will allow for street dedication to occur on San Rafael. Where currently the lane, as you can see in the first photo, the top photo merges there, and that there is lack of pedestrian walkway. The project will require the development of curb, gutter, and sidewalk on both the project site and the adjacent site so that the new sidewalk connects with the two existing sidewalks on both sides. So the photo on the right, there's a yellow line. It basically is indicating that the sidewalk, curb, and gutter will continue to connect.
Alex, can you tell us what the little cutout parcel is that is sort of surrounded by this parcel?
This parcel, this one right here?
Yes.
So that's actually a separate parcel completely. It's a barbecue restaurant. And I believe there's a little fitness center in there as well.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, if I might, and I'm sorry, Alex, we're throwing a bunch of curveballs at you. Go one slide prior. So the navigation center is actually on the very left part of the screen, just before that road, McCarthy Road curves. You have the apartments, and then above it, you have some industrial uses. Alex, yeah, to the left of that and up one, that warehouse, that's the navigation center. Down one. Yeah, right there.
Right there. Okay.
Thank you. Sorry, Alex.
650.
Oh, it's 650 feet from the navigation center. Thank you. Okay, so the project will include one 3-story building, one vehicle wash area, 180 covered RV storage carports, trash enclosure, and new landscaping around the perimeter. The storage facility is not a 24-hour facility. Customers will have access inside the facility via gate code and only during store operating hours. There will also be a 24-hour video surveillance system that will have cameras inside and outside. So the proposed use again
recording in progress.
Storage, and it is a permitted use in the M1 SP zone by right. So the vehicle washing station will be approximately 18 feet 8 inches high and will be made to accommodate larger RVs. The excess water will run off into underground storage via swell, where it will have to comply with the WQMP conditions. The trash enclosure will be located adjacent to the RV car wash or RV wash and comply with the development standards of the Palm Springs zoning code. The RV ports will stand approximately 15 feet tall and will be constructed with galvanized steel and will offer protection from the sun. And landscape will surround the southwest and east property lines and help screen the RV parking area. Landscape will be desert appropriate and will comply with the Coachella Valley Lush and Efficient guidelines. The applicant is proposing solar panels on the roof as well as the mechanical equipment, which will all be screened via parapet. So as mentioned previously, the building is 3 stories tall, which is approximately 30 feet high. This will be the tallest building in the area. However, other buildings range between 1 and 2 stories in height. The proposed building isn't significantly higher than existing buildings, and it does comply with the development standards of this zone. Additionally, the building has a 46-foot setback on the east property line and a 131-foot setback from the adjacent apartments on the west, and 42-foot setback from the barbecue restaurant as well. So it shouldn't tower over the adjacent buildings. So staff, I'm sorry. So these are additional photos and renderings of the project. And some elevations just to give you an idea of the height. So staff recommends approval of the project subject to the attached conditions of approval. This concludes my report. The applicant is available to answer any additional questions, and our CEQA consultant is also available to answer any questions pertaining to the initial study.
Thank you. Questions for staff? Commissioner Lane.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a couple of questions for staff relative to some of the findings that we're asked to make. One of them is number 11, and it's talking about odors and possible, and how to mitigate possible odors that may emanate from the parked RVs. And it says as a solution, the odors will be maintained. What puzzles me, or part of what puzzles me, is that when I look at the MND and the discussion of environmental impacts, it indicates that there's no odors are expected. So my question is twofold. One, do the parked RVs emanate odors? And 2, how is it that they will be maintained? I think we need to either delete the condition or delete the discussion of odors if it doesn't apply, or specifically say how they're going to be maintained.
I believe it could be something that can be deleted since the MND states that no odor should be generated.
Okay, all right. Next question is, we seem to have on the drawings 1-foot sidewalks, which just doesn't sound believable. Can you tell me, are those dimensions correct? And this is, I believe, both on San Rafael and on West Radio Road. 1-foot sidewalk and pedestrian access easement.
No, the sidewalk should match the existing sidewalk's length, width on either side. So that might be just a typo.
Okay, I'm seeing it on sheet. It appears on a number of sheets, starting with C100, but we can ignore anything that says there's in C200. We can ignore anything that says a 1-foot sidewalk.
Correct.
Is what I'm guessing. Okay, and then the third thing is the finding relative to landscape areas. The finding we're asked to make is that the landscape is designed in accordance with the standards, and that the design of stormwater management is appropriately incorporated into that site design. However, the finding that we actually make discusses all the types of species of plant material we're going to use without saying what I believe was the critical thing that you said in your presentation. And I think if you can assure that this is correct, we might need to clean up the findings. You said that this does comply with the city's landscape drought tolerant landscape ordinance.
So-
Or did you, go ahead.
Sorry, something we could probably clarify as well. So the city does basically use the Coachella Valley Lush and Efficient Handbook as their guideline. So
Okay.
that could
So
be.
the standards that I see that could come into play are the city's ordinance for water efficient landscaping, the state's water efficient landscaping ordinance, and the Riverside County Agricultural Commissioner's Office, which also needs to approve this. And if all of those are correct, then when it comes time to making suggestions for passage, I will do so. So are you saying it will be required to comply with all three of those?
Yes.
Okay.
Edward.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Commissioner Hirschbein
Um,
and then Commissioner Irvin.
I think I'd like Mr. Hadwin to respond to this. We received a letter from the State Department of Fish and Wildlife that in very dense bureaucratic language seems to condemn the findings of the CEQA report or the environmental report that was done by our consultant. And if that's the case, I'd like Mr. Hadwin to respond to this, please. If that's the case.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so we received a letter from the Department of Fish and Wildlife that in very dense bureaucratic language seems to find fault with our consultant's CEQA report. And I'd like you to respond to that. Is the report deficient? Is the Fish and Wildlife letter determinative? Is it something that you agree with? And should we be vetting the reports more closely before we let Fish and Wildlife see it, so we don't get these kinds of responses back from them?
So I'll start by saying that the CEQA consultant is actually here, and I think in the next portion of the hearing, they can certainly respond in much more detail than I can provide. But what I can say is that my understanding is there was a bit of a lag between that letter coming in and sort of the finalization of the documents for CEQA, to the point where our consultant is confident that all of those items have already been addressed. And so I think they can speak to it in more detail, but we are confident that those items have been addressed.
So are you saying that the report that the Fish and Wildlife reviewed was not complete at the time they reviewed it?
What I understand is that the letter was reviewing an older version of the documents that hadn't fully addressed those comments yet, but they have since been addressed.
So has Fish and Wildlife seen the new document?
That I don't know, and I would defer to the consultant to confirm.
Okay, thank you.
And if the consultant is here and would like to speak.
Madam Chair, if I may, Nicole Chris, the city's environmental consultant. California Fish and CDFW wrote a letter in response to the document that was circulated. They have been much more active in their response in the last several months without much consideration for the projects and the sites that they're looking at. The IS correctly addressed both burrowing owl and
what's IS? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, initial study, IS. The document that's in your packet correctly addressed both burrowing owl and Migratory Bird Treaty Act mitigation. Those are both included. They they would prefer a different language, but the language that is in the document assures protection of both migratory birds and burrowing owls. They are requesting a full biological resource survey and specialized plant surveys. This site is significantly disturbed, is surrounded by development on 4 sides, whether that is physical development or roadways, and is frankly the exact type of site that the multi-species habitat conservation plan had in mind when it was established. The potential for endangered plants or endangered species on this site is not existent. The city conducted the correct level of review. The last item that CDFW requests is the addition of a mitigation measure for the payment of the MSHCP fee. However, that is a standard requirement, and we do not include mitigation measures for standard requirements. That fee must be paid by the developer before they can pull building permits. So we believe that the analysis was done correctly. The wording of the mitigation measures is the standard wording we have used in the city for ISs for years. And it does not, the requested amendments that the department has made in that wording do not change either the intent or the outcome of those mitigation measures.
So what Mr. Hadwin said earlier, I thought, or tell me if I'm wrong, they reviewed an older document and you're saying that you reviewed the current document.
That's correct.
So they reviewed the current document.
And I apologize for misstating that. I think I was misunderstanding the disconnect between the conditions we used and what they were requesting and what the position of the consultant was.
And so you're taking exception to the analysis of Fish and Wildlife then, is that correct?
I think that that we disagree with the level of significance that CDFW has placed on this property. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, Chair. I had a question. Is there currently a storage facility in and around that area?
Not that I'm aware of, but I can look into that.
The letters we received said that there was partially finished one. Is that correct?
I'd have to look into that.
Yeah, Madam Chair and Commissioner Irvin, I, off the top of my head, I'm not aware of anything that's being completed in that area. We would have to look into that and get back to you.
Okay. And then also is from looking at the photos, it looks like this this project will go on to Rosa Parks. Is that correct?
No.
No?
No. And to answer your previous question, Devon Self-Storage is actually just north of this on that parcel that's next to Rosa Parks.
And what's the size on that?
That's right. I'm seeing that now. It's between that is located at sort of the intersection of McCarthy and Radio and extends up to Rosa Parks. And this property is a little further to the east, and the northern boundary is Radio Road. So there is a parcel between Radio Road and Rosa Parks that looks like undeveloped.
Okay. All right, that's all I had.
If there are no other questions, I will open the public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'm here. Let me see if I can turn on that video
You
here.
have 10 minutes to make your presentation.
Okay. Well, it's certain, Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's certainly a pleasure being here today. We're extremely excited about this project. It's a project that we've been working on with staff for probably about the last 12 months. And I can't say enough about staff. They've been very helpful in helping us understand design throughout the process. This is a facility we hope to own long-term. Therefore, we're going to have the absolute highest level of security on site. In addition, in terms of, there was a comment in terms of the landscaping, and I would like to address that. This is an entitlement plan set. We will surely work during plan check process with Public Works and the engineering department to design stormwater in compliance with city standards. In terms of, and we're really excited about this is, and Alex had shown a photo of the existing condition along West San Rafael and the inconsistency between our property frontage and the neighbors we have to both the west and the east. This is a condition that we're going to widen the road to be consistent with our neighbors, because what we're looking at right now is certainly a dangerous situation with pedestrians and drivers. So we've spoken with our neighbor. We will be conditioned to improve his property as well. He's on board with that, and we're very excited. So I'd like to introduce CJ Rogers, who's our architect on this project, and maybe he could say a few words.
Yep, this is CJ Rogers here. I'm the Director of Design with Insight Property Group. There we go. And just to add to what Mike already laid down, I think Alex has already given a great overview on the project. We have a facility here that we think is consistent with the context, given the adjacent uses. We do have some industrial uses next door, some of the adjacent architecture as well. We think that the facility itself is going to be a Class A facility, similar to our other projects we're building in Southern California, and excited to bring some of this design and this use, which we've identified as an area in need in terms of storage and RV storage as well. So there's a great need for it. Our company does a lot of analytics and research on identifying sites that are underserved. And we put together a great project and work really well with the local staff and community. And excited to hear some comments from Planning Commission. Thank you.
Are there members of the public who wish to speak? I don't see any raised hands. If you do wish to speak, if you would unmute yourself and speak. Seeing none, you have 3 minutes of rebuttal. I'm assuming you don't have rebuttal to your own comments, but if you have anything else you'd like to say, and then I would open it up to Planning Commission questions.
Sure. I'll keep it brief. I think, this is an as of right project. We are conforming with all existing development standards outlined in code. In fact, we're really going beyond that in terms of step back, in terms of landscaping. With that said, I think there is further review in terms of landscaping design. I think Alex had a comment about incorporating additional landscaping in the staff report on the western property line. We are totally open to that. Not only to meet our stormwater requirements with the city, but just to offer up a design that perhaps the commission would like to see additional landscaping.
Questions of the applicant? I have one if no one else does. You said that you were going to be improving your neighbor's property. Is that the barbecue?
Correct.
What are you doing?
We are just, there's currently, I believe it's a 38 foot dedication easement in order to make our property line as well as the barbecue property line consistent with the neighbor, the apartment complex to the west, as well as the property line and curb line with the property owner to the east. So currently what you have right now is our site as well as the barbecue site kind of bulbs out, which is creating a very dangerous condition. And by the way, I would like to note, I mean, I believe that's community benefit. We are fronting all those costs. So it's not like we're going to go seek public financing to do this. All of those is going to be included in our project.
So are you also adding a sidewalk on his property?
Correct. About 8 feet.
Good. Great barbecue, by the way.
I had lunch there the other day. Well, about 4 weeks ago, and yeah, I wanted to take some home to the family for sure. Glad they're staying. Really glad they're staying. Great owner.
Commissioner Irvin and then Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. It's also a hair salon as well as I think they have another store or something there. It's inside of that complex. But so you said you have spoke with the owner and the owner is fine with the project?
Yep, that's correct. So he was well aware of the dedication that was imposed on his property some time ago, and we're going to be paying for it, and it's going to create a safer condition for this area.
And the 8 feet of sidewalk on his property is part of the conditions that the city has imposed?
That's correct. It's Exhibit A in the resolution. I don't recall the condition, but it's something that we're going to agree to.
Thank you. And Commissioner Miller, you had a question?
Yeah, question for the applicant. I don't know if I'm using the right term here. What is considered the market area for a facility of this size?
Yeah, typically it depends on whether it's an urban environment. It depends on whether it's a suburban environment. In this market, it's probably a 3 to 4 mile radius. Okay. What we're finding, and when we look at markets that are healthy to develop in, what we're finding is that all these existing facilities in Palm Springs are at least 95, 96% full. They've been around a while, they're stabilized. So we're definitely delivering a product where there is a need for it. And, you know, everyone here knows, I mean, it certainly looks like work from home is here to stay. What was once, I think, a spare bedroom is now being converted to an office, and people need more space. Residential developers, they're building smaller units, and it's a function of construction costs. So, you know, there really is a big need for this product, really anywhere in Southern California.
Follow up, I'm sure your marketing team does the research to show there's several similar size facilities under construction or in the pipeline, for instance, along Green Autry, north of or east of the airport. And so those aren't going to bring you over capacity in terms of this outreach, or?
Not at all. I think that was a 65,000 gross square foot facility. So you're really netting, you know, 400 units on that. That's going to go like that.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Roberts, did you have a question? I couldn't tell if your hand was up. Okay, so thank you very much. The public hearing is closed. Comments first, just going through the commission if there are comments. Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, just kind of going back on my theme of landscape, and I know the applicant said this is relatively preliminary. I don't have any objections to any of the species that are proposed. They seem to be all desert-worthy plants. I did note that there aren't any palm trees proposed, and I don't know if that's a personal preference or not, but this is a pretty big site. I would hope that you'd be able to put in a couple of palm trees just to kind of carry on the namesake of the city, Palm Springs. And then my only other comment regarding the landscape is some of the species, while they're showing at 24 or 36-inch box, they seem a little short in terms of their overall height. And I think you'd be able to find some specimens that are taller at the time they're installed.
Sure. We're happy to implement that goal, and I'm not sure how it would work. It seems like it'd be implemented as a condition here, and then we would sort of take it up with ARC. Not necessarily, that's anecdotally saying that. But we're open to palm trees, happy to do it.
Other comments? I have two. I actually would like to send to ARC the comment that we need shade trees along both West Radio Road and West San Rafael. That if possible, something 15 feet in a canopy to provide some street shade for people who are walking.
Sure, that's something we could agree to.
And my other question is possibly one for staff regarding the fish and wildlife. I'm concerned generally, maybe not on this specific project, the kind of reporting that they're asking for is something I'm very sympathetic to doing. And I don't know that I necessarily want to change the neg deck here, but I really would like you to go through what they're requesting we do and see if we can't use the language now that Fish and Wildlife is requesting in future projects. And I don't know how we do that with this, but I'm concerned that we've just sort of said, well, we haven't done it and we don't need to do it.
Right. Madam Chair, I think since it sounds like it's a bit of a shift in how they have approached issues like this, I think I might suggest that I have a phone call with them and sort of understand their methodology and potentially include our consultant on that and sort of, address the concerns that you're raising and make sure that we're sort of all on the same page and these items aren't coming in the day before hearings. So yes, we will take that back.
Yeah, if you would take that back, I don't think we need to make changes for this specific site. With that, we have, I think we have a motion on this. The motion, Commissioner Miller, what did you want to include in the motion?
Well, I wanted to include an inclusion of larger size plant material at time of planting. In terms of the overall height, some of the overall heights on the species are only in the 5 to 7 foot range. And I think it's pretty easy to find specimens that are upwards of 12 to 14 feet at a minimum. And I also want to pick up on what you said, Chair Wormick, about trees along Radio Road and the trees along San Rafael, that they should be a substantial size.
And 15 feet on center.
Yeah, the species that they propose, I think, are good. Generally, the cork oak is a good shade tree for the desert, and the olive obviously is good. But I think the size needs to be bumped up.
And we also had Commissioner Elaine wanted to remove one of the conditions that related to noise.
Yes, Madam Chair. I, excuse me, wanted to remove out of condition 11 the third sentence. And I wanted to insert into condition number 8, I want to delete the second sentence in its entirety and say instead that the project as conditioned will comply with the water efficient landscape ordinances of the city and the state, and will comply with Riverside County Agricultural Commissioner's Office requirements.
Madam Chair, point of clarification for Commissioner Lane. Are you referring to the findings 8 and 11 rather than conditions?
Yes.
Yeah,
I am.
Okay.
Thank you for reading my mind.
And are we also deleting condition 11? Or not?
As I understand it, Commissioner Land's request for condition 11 was to remove the references to odor generated by the RVs, since the MND did not identify a concern with odor.
Thank you. So those are the items we have in the motion. Is there a maker of this motion? Would someone like to move it? Commissioner?
I will.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Commissioner Miller, can you call the, is there any comment? Can you call
from the applicant? I'm sorry.
No.
Okay, sorry about that.
This is just before us at this point. Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Land,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzi,
Yeah.
Vice Chair Roberts,
Yes.
and Chair Womack.
Yes.
Project is approved 7-0 unanimously.
Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Just one comment as we finish this for the public. We got several letters saying that the public would appreciate that the community needed affordable housing. And just for the community's information, it's very difficult on a site that is already zoned for what the applicant is asking, and there being no application for affordable housing to in any way act on that request from the public. Thank you. So moving right along. 2C is the Palm Springs, City of Palm Springs for a general plan amendment and zone text amendment to modify density standards and revise legal non-conforming criteria for existing hotel and multifamily residential structures. Staff report, please. And this is also after the staff report and questions, we will take public comment. The city is the applicant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you see my screen in full screen?
You just changed it. We could see it before.
My apologies. How about now?
No. Yes.
Yes. Great. Good evening. This item proposes minor amendments to the general plan and zone text aimed at removing barriers to housing production and facilitating more affordable housing typologies. As you will recall, we initiated this process in 2021 at the direction of the Commission, and in response to inquiries we were receiving about potential hotel conversions and mixed-use development that were running into obstacles under current regulations. Staff were directed at that time to study the issues and return with proposed amendments to eliminate potential barriers to housing production, and tonight's recommendations are the result of that work. I'm going to talk about these in more detail, but for the general plan, we are essentially proposing 2 changes. The first would apply to legally operating hotels and timeshares that were originally constructed as apartments and would allow them to convert back to apartment uses at the same density level they were originally constructed at. The second would apply within the CBD district downtown, central business district, and would provide certain exceptions from the underlying density requirements to ensure that mixed-use development can accommodate residential uses. And again, I'll talk about that in more detail. For the zone text amendment, what we're essentially doing is proposing to effectuate the general plan amendments I just talked about on the hotel and to apartment conversions by establishing a new conditional use permit that would be applicable to those conversions. It would also include administrative language as well as the associated findings for that CUP. So starting with the hotel conversions, what we are seeing is that changes to the general plan and zoning code made over many years have placed more restriction on residential development than was typically in effect at the time of the original construction, specifically regulations regarding maximum permitted density. In one example, we are aware of a 45-room hotel that proposed to convert back to a 45-unit apartment as it was originally constructed. However, under today's regulations and established density standards, only 24 apartments would be permitted today, reducing over half of the potential apartments from that site. Historically, as you know, these were often studio or one-bedroom apartments that could provide a more affordable housing typology to meet current housing needs. However, our current rules would preclude their conversion or even encourage that they be converted to larger, more expensive units, 2 or 3 bedrooms, to get down to that 24-unit number. So to remedy this, we are looking at the following changes. I'm not going to read everything that you're going to see on the next couple of slides. I'll try to paraphrase, so please ask any questions. But the first item is that we propose the addition of a statement on page 2-3 of the general plan, indicating that such conversions are permitted at their original density through the grant of a conditional use permit. To ensure consistency within the general plan, we also need to rescind and replace Land Use Policy 7.9, which today states that hotel conversions are strongly discouraged. In light of the city's current housing goals and needs, we are proposing to replace that text with a more affirmative statement that supports the conversion of small hotels to housing units as appropriate through the conditional use permit process. Land Use Action 7.5 would also be deleted in its entirety, as it essentially directs that the zoning code be updated to establish procedures and requirements for hotel conversions, which is what we are achieving with this proposal. So it becomes redundant. To further codify this process, we are also proposing a new section be added to the zoning code in Chapter 9405 to regulate these conversions and the associated CUP process. The new section would apply to any structure which is lawfully being used as a hotel, motel, or transient lodging, but which was originally constructed as an apartment or apartment hotel. The amendment would establish the density for such conversions may be the same as the original apartment use, and also establishes zoning tools available to address parking requirements should they be deficient. For example, a specific parking plan could be sought from the commission by the applicant, or exemptions may be available through current code for certain historic properties, such as Class 1 and 2 historic sites. The specific findings the commission would need to make to grant the COP are listed here, and they are intended to ensure that the conversion is contributing positively to the city's overall housing stock, as shown in condition 1 or finding 1, that it will not have adverse impacts on city services or public safety, that the development is harmonious with the surrounding community and meets applicable property standards, that there are no adverse traffic or circulation impacts, and that sufficient measures are in place for ongoing property management and security. This will allow the commission to review these applications on a case-by-case basis to ensure their appropriateness and that the use is appropriately conditioned. Finally, the amendment includes standard language regarding revocation for failure to meet the conditions, as well as administrative language about the commission's authority to grant the CUP, which are these items shown on this page. Together, we believe that these changes will establish a clear process for the conversion of these small hotel uses into apartment uses that will remove barriers to housing production, while also ensuring an appropriate level of oversight by the commission. The second item is regarding mixed-use development in the CBD, or Central Business District, which is primarily located downtown. These changes are a bit simpler. Again, changes to regulations over the years have established higher density requirements for the CBD to encourage more business and more residents in our downtown. We are still very much supportive of that goal, and that has not changed. However, there have been some unintended consequences of these policies that may, in effect, become barriers to housing production in some instances, and that's the goal that we are trying to correct here. More specifically, the general plan establishes a minimum density target of 21 units per acre within the CBD. This minimum often cannot be met in smaller existing building stock that exists downtown, where you might have, a commercial use at the ground floor, but space on the second or third story above that could become apartment uses, but may not be able to meet that minimum density standard. So that becomes a barrier to converting those upper floor uses to residential uses in the existing smaller building stock. Second is a new mixed-use development that is proposing substantial commercial use along the ground floor of a major thoroughfare. Because that space is being taken up by commercial or non-residential use, it isn't going into the calculation of density. And so, other development standards and site conditions are such that it can be difficult to meet that density target while also providing ground floor commercial, which is also a goal of ours. So you'll recall, for example, recent discussions around Rios, which is a mixed-use project on North Palm Canyon, which received positive feedback from the Commission at a study session a little over a year ago. That project is proposing ground-level commercial along Palm Canyon with 25 housing units behind, resulting in a density of 11 units per acre. So you can see how that is coming in under the 21 units that per acre that are required by the general plan. So we are supportive of continuing active commercial uses along the street, but doing so with current development standards sometimes results in non-compliant density levels. So the solution we are proposing to this issue is additional language within the CBD or Central Business District description on page 2.7 of the land use element of the general plan that would add the underlying text shown here. It would essentially provide 2 exceptions to the 21 unit per acre minimum. First, for smaller existing buildings that may only be able to accommodate, like I said, 2 to 3 apartments in a smaller building. And in these cases, we would say that no minimum density threshold would apply. And again, that would only be for existing buildings. The second would be for new mixed-use developments that are proposing substantial ground floor commercial uses along a major thoroughfare. So that would be Palm Canyon and Indian Canyon, where the amendment would reduce that 21 minimum units per acre to 10 to allow for those mixed-use developments to occur and to provide residential uses. We believe this amendment would provide additional flexibility that may encourage additional residential uses, and in particular may encourage more affordable housing typologies in the downtown core through smaller rental apartments in those existing buildings, for example. With that, we are recommending that the Commission adopt the resolution that has been provided to implement these changes and forward this to City Council with a recommendation for approval. With that, I conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions of staff? And if you can take this down, thank you. Commissioner Miller.
Yeah, question for Christopher. Had staff considered putting in a minimum amount of commercial at the ground floor that's required in order to take advantage of the lower density? And it's to address a concern that I will have is, are we going to have a developer coming in and trying to put in 1,000 square foot of commercial on the ground floor when they could fit, let's say, 20,000 square feet and try to get by with that minimal amount of commercial and still take advantage of the lower density? I'm concerned about that.
Right. So we didn't consider a minimum just because I think it was difficult to sort of account for every situation in the CBD. The lot sizes and configurations are quite different. The zoning standards can be different. But what I will say our interpretation of it is, and if we need to sort of think about revising the language through your decision tonight to make this clearer, was that the commercial needs to be provided along the entire major thoroughfares frontage in order to take advantage of that reduction. So you can't sort of put a little, commercial use in the corner and then, residential in the balance and get that reduction.
One possible way of sort of buttoning that up a little bit would be to put a percentage of the frontage along the major thoroughfare must be of commercial space. So that would be one way of addressing it, and that would be changeable, depending on the size of the lot, certainly.
Yeah, I think we would definitely be open to that amendment.
Other questions? Commissioner Hirschman.
So when you say commercial, does that necessitate being publicly accessed services? Because we've had a stretch of that definition when it came to approving a project downtown before, and it turns out something that was accessible only to the condominium owners was deemed publicly accessible.
Right. The intention was not for it to sort of be sort of a gym or any sort of amenity space that would be non-residential, but for the benefit of the residents only, that it would be sort of retail space or, institutional or public service uses that would be sort of generally accessible from the street.
So can you say something along those lines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we would be open to an amendment clarifying that.
And then in the conversion part of your presentation, you made reference to small hotels. Is that the only type of project that would be convertible back to apartments, or was that just you're just trying to describe something that might happen?
I think when you look historically at the problem that we're solving and the types of uses that were originally constructed as apartments and then converted into hotels, which is really the universe that we're talking about, they are smaller, older, historic hotels. So we don't really have any examples of really large projects that were built as apartments and have become hotels that I'm aware of. But I certainly look to your expertise. I think we're really dealing with the smaller, older hotel stock in just a few neighborhoods of the city.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to open the public hearing. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed, and it's back to, we've had some suggestions. My question to you are there language changes you would look at here based on these suggestions? You're asking us tonight to move this on to City Council, correct?
That's correct. Ideally, this would move on tonight because there are other projects in the queue that we would like to take advantage of this project. I think, we have some good suggestions here that I think, we can see if there's a motion to amend the language as written. But if we need to go back and look at it, we certainly can. I don't know if Commissioner Hirschbein had any thoughts on what an appropriate percentage of the frontage would be, but we can certainly take that into consideration.
That was Mr. Miller's concern.
I'm so sorry, Mr. Miller.
My concern was to make it specific to public uses.
I look so much like Commissioner Hirschbein. I can see how you would get us.
I sincerely apologize.
Even the same glasses.
I do have some suggested language if you'd like to hear.
Sure.
Please.
And this is found in the page 5 of 6 is where the language is, where your current language says would be reduced from 21 to 10 units per acre for new mixed use projects that provide ground for commercial use along the primary frontage. I would recommend that the language be for new mixed use projects that provide at least 75% of the frontage on the major thoroughfare as publicly accessible and public serving ground floor commercial use along the frontage of the major thoroughfare. Something to that effect.
As publicly accessed and public serving?
Publicly accessible and public serving. I don't know if we need both of those, but I think that covers both the accessibility and Commissioner Hirschbein's concern about it being a community center for the condo or a gym, as you mentioned.
I like the language. I may suggest we don't include publicly accessible and maybe just stick to public serving, because I think that has certain meanings within planning that could sort of insinuate a different meaning.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And
I think we've got direction from the commission pretty clearly so far. I can work with Mr. Hadwin on finalizing that language too.
And in terms of the language of definitions of small hotels, Commissioner Roberts, in your time on council, do you have any sense of what the average size of the small hotels is, what the largest ones are? You're muted.
It's all over the map. We have a lot of small hotels, when we look at Arenas, right? Arenas. I mean, we've got an entire street of hotels that range from, as little as 10 rooms to 30 rooms. And then we have some much larger hotels. I think we just need to keep this as open as possible in the way that it's written, because we're an anomaly in that we have all these little tiny hotels. And it's because we're a resort town and they're left over from another era. They certainly wouldn't or couldn't be built that way today.
So if we just say older hotels?
How about existing?
Do we even need the word small?
Yeah. Why are we defining size? What if somebody wants to convert something bigger?
If it's a hotel that was originally built as an apartment building, I think that's enough of a definition, isn't it?
Madam Chair, if I might intervene for 1 second, I think the term small is used really as a descriptor in staff report language. It actually isn't contained in the amendments itself that I can see. We talk about lawfully existing hotel, motel, or transient apartment, or I forget what the term is, sorry. Any structure which is lawfully being used as a hotel, motel, or other form of transient lodging, but which was originally constructed as and used as an apartment, hotel, or similar use. So it actually isn't in the language that we are inserting into the general plan or zoning.
I think it's broad. It's absolutely as broad as it needs to be.
Right.
Madam Chair, if I may provide some clarification too. I had worked with planning staff in coming up with this language, as well as the code amendments that are proposed as well. And the idea was that there was not going to be any sort of a small size limit or size limit on it, recognizing the fact that there may be some large ones that would fall into this category, but the vast majority would be on the smaller side.
But is there any reason to define it?
No. We didn't believe so, Commissioner.
Why put any limitations on it whatsoever?
Right, and we haven't.
No, there are no limitations in this.
And I'm not proposing any limitations. I just wanted to make sure it was broad enough to cover what we have in town. So we have, I think we have, if that's it for comments, I think we have a motion. If you could read back the general sense of the motion that Commissioner Miller made. And you're muted.
There I am. To approve the resolution and recommend approval to the City Council with a modification to the general plan language regarding mixed-use projects in the CBD, to include language that at least 75% of the frontage on the major thoroughfare be public serving commercial use. And we will workshop that language.
Can I have a motion? Commissioner Miller?
Sure, I'd certainly move that. Do you need specific language? I would move what Director Hadwin just mentioned.
And can I have a second?
I'll second.
Can you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Vice Chair Roberts,
Yes.
Commissioner Leyen,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hirschbeck,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzi,
Yes.
Chairwoman.
Yes. And thank you for this work.
Madam
Thank
Chair,
you all.
I would like to echo that. We asked for this some time ago, and I know staff has put work into it. The city attorney has. I don't know if it's going to produce apartments or not. I've got my fingers crossed. I hope so. I think this is a great thing for our buildings that are having a hard time finding a use that supports them.
The beauty of it is that it's a general plan in the zoning code and not the 10 Commandments. So it can be a living document. We adjust as necessary.
Thank you, everyone.
Should we expect the 10 Commandments to be coming to us in the near future?
Well, I've been talking with the author about this the last few hours. So yeah, we'll have something.
I think we should leave extra time for that.
Okay, moving forward, 4A is new business, Avalon 1150 LLC for the approval of final development plans for 191 single-family residential units on 40-foot and 45-foot wide lots within Phase 2 section of the Miralon development located at 801 Sunrise Way. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. So if I may, I just want to open my the presentation to share with you. Okay, can you see, Madam Chair?
You need to, now you've got two. You want to just go to one.
I don't know why this is. Okay, how about now?
Perfect.
Okay, all right, thank you so much. So this is the same builder that you reviewed 60 homes for by May of this year. So they came back, they take cues from the last approval to develop this new proposal that is before you today. So what you are to be looking at today, in other words, your scope of review is to review the substantial conformance to the preliminary development plans that you reviewed when you approved the design guidelines a few years back. So what is being presented today are of two different lot sizes. The first one is 40-foot wide lots, and then the second one is the 45-foot wide lots. Both of them will have three different plans. They are designated as Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3. And each of them, we have two types of elevations designated as elevation A and B. The difference, however, is that the 40-foot wide lots will be two-story buildings, while the 45-foot wide lots will be one-story buildings. The two-story buildings will range from 1,878 square foot to 2,090 square foot. And as I mentioned, they will be two-story buildings. And then on the 45 wide lots, they will range from 2,184 to 2,470 square foot. So if you recall, Madam Chair, with your leadership, a subcommittee was constituted a while back, and the committee met to review these plans on both 40 and the 45-foot wide lots on September 21st. They looked at them, they were mostly pleased with the designs in that, like I mentioned earlier, they took cues from the previous submittal, that the 130 homes that you approved on May 11, 2022. However, some comments and directions were given. I listed those comments in your staff report. The applicants took those and then revised the plans and submitted, and that's what's before you today. So specifically, this is where the new proposal will be going to. As I mentioned, it will be within phase 2 of Miralon, and these lots will be located on the northeasterly and southeasterly section of the project site. The previous one you approved were mostly in the midsection and in the southeasterly section of Miralon. And this is just the plot plan of the 40-foot wide lots, which are 2-story buildings. And as I mentioned, they are mostly to the south of the southeasterly section of the site. And here, I just want to talk a little bit about the reciprocal use easement area that you will see in this proposal. So essentially what it is that it allows lot A, so say these are 2 lots, lot A and B, it allows the owner of lot A additional space to use, and that's why it's a reciprocal use easement. Lot B will have the same benefit on the next lot. Another question were asked about mixing of the single and the 2-story buildings, but this sample, is taken directly from the design guideline, from the Miralon design guideline. So as you can see on the 40-foot wide lots, they are all 2-story buildings, while the 45-foot wide lots contain single-story building. I'm sure the applicant will want to expatiate more on that. And because this question also came up during the subcommittee review, and they explained the reason why they are restricted to those massings. And here, this is the floor plan. So what I'm showing you now is the 40-foot wide lots, which contain 2-story buildings. So you will see the first floor and then the second floor. The second floor is limited to 50% or less by the Miralon design guideline, and that's why you see the main difference in the massing here. This floor types will contain 3 bedrooms, a loft, 3.5 bathroom, and a 2-car garage. And as I said, it will range. This particular floor type will be 2,227 square foot in size.
Can you go back to that for a second? That'll just be on that one question I will ask the developer about why there isn't direct bathroom access from the loft area.
Okay, all right. So this would be the plan 1 type street elevation. So they did make some revisions as a result of the comments they received from the subcommittee. And the next slide is the rear elevation. So what you will see there is that they have added, one of the comments from the subcommittee was that the overhang be increased from 18-inch to 24-inch, and that applies to all of the 191 units. So this is the perspective of how Plan 1A will look like, and also it shows what the color scheme on this particular one. So overall, Avalon is proposing 8 different color schemes. This is color scheme number 3. The different color schemes are also contained in the exhibits that you have. And these are consistent with what the Miralon design guideline calls for as well. And here are the elevation types. So this again is the 2-story. The maximum height on these is 24 feet, which is also consistent with the Miralon design guidelines. The next slide shows the color scheme of Plan 1A. So one of the comments that featured very prominently during the subcommittee review is the left side elevations, which according to the subcommittee at that time, was not well articulated. So they went back and changed it, and this is what is now before you. One of the reasons why they couldn't do a whole lot on this is because of that reciprocal use easement. Most of the windows are limited to clear story type to guarantee privacy in this area. So again, so this plan is showing the color scheme. So a good example is, this is the original plan prior to the subcommittee review. This was how it looked like. And after the revision, this is the revised plan that has a bit of articulation on this side of the elevation.
Edward, when we were looking at this, we asked them to change the plane where that dark stripe is, that it be set back or come forward a few inches. Did they do that?
Yes, so if you, this is not really showing that, but there is offset here.
How much?
There's an offset. I couldn't tell how wide it is, but there is an offset. So it's not as flat as what you saw originally. And this is just a section that shows the interior and then the maximum height of this plan type. This is, I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay, so this is plan elevation B. So you can see the difference here is the roof plane is slightly different than what you saw in plan 1A. And this denotes the front street view and is color scheme 6. This is how the rear view will look like. And then there is the shading element that's been incorporated. And this is the perspective drawing of it, the rendering. So Madam Chair, I don't know how much of this you want me to go. I have over 107 slides, so, but they all look, they are very, these are all taken from the exhibits that you have before you. But one thing I do want to talk about again, yeah, this is what I'd like to show you again. And this one indicates a little bit better than the previous one that you saw. You see the offset here.
No, you can't tell it's offset.
Yeah, the depth of it, perhaps the architect will tell us the depth of this offset here.
Does anyone want Edward to go through all of the slides?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't hear you well.
There's just a question to the commission.
Oh, okay.
Does anyone want Edward to go through all the slides, or you just want to call up a page where you had some concerns?
Let's follow up if we need to.
Right. So just call, so we won't do this, but we will, if you have a page or a model where you have a concern, I'd like you to raise it.
Okay. All right, so I will pause here. Staff recommendation is to approve the final PDD, but if there are any additional comments or recommendations that we should carry forward to ARC, staff will be looking forward to receiving those. So Madam Chair, that will conclude my staff report. The applicant team is also here if you have any questions for them. Thank you.
I think at this point, why don't we call, unless people have questions of Edward, why don't we call up the applicant and ask questions of the applicant?
Brad Schuckart speaking on behalf of Freehold, the Miralon developer. I want to first thank.
Can we take this down? Do you have a presentation for us? Or
Yeah, we do. This is my very brief introduction, and then I'm going to turn it over to the architects at Robert Heide Architects. We have with us Dan Weibel and Colin Liu, who can answer particular technical questions. But I just wanted to thank Commissioner Hirschbein in particular for participating in the subcommittee meeting. I thought that that was a very successful way to approach this design. And to reiterate Edward's earlier comments, we tried to synthesize the feedback that we received from the 50-foot wide product and incorporate those design ideas into these designs. And I'm sure there'll be questions about the single story on one side of the street and then 2-story on the other. I will tell you that that is in response to a settlement agreement. When this project was originally entitled, it was challenged. And one of the accommodations the developer at the time made is they would limit the homes on the outer perimeter of the community to single stories. And when you combine that with the fact that the 40-foot wide lots are outside of that zone, and that's a very tight lot, you almost are forced to go into 2 stories to create a marketable unit. So you've got all 1 stories on one side to accommodate the settlement agreement and all 2 stories to deliver enough livable space to make the unit functional, and also offer a 2-car garage and all the other things that I believe the city wants to see. So that's my piece. I will turn it over to RHA. We're prepared to go through every slide, but Edward sort of started down that path. So I might suggest that we take the council's recommended approach and maybe allow you to ask specific questions of the architect on a plan by plan or a page by page basis.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Sorry, one last word. So by the way, the box labeled conference 1 is the architect's office. So there's Colin on the right in the red and Dan in the white on the left.
And just before you start, Commissioner Hirschbein, did you have any comments being on the subcommittee?
Well, I thought it was a successful meeting, and I'm happy that it's going to go on to Architectural Review Committee. So I think if we do have some specific concerns, we should relay them to ARC. And my only question is on that offset. What is it? What is it? So I'm sure they'll answer that question.
Why don't, on that note, why don't I address that first? That offset is indicated on the floor plans. By the way, my name is Dan Wabel with Robert Heide Architects, and this is Colin Liu. That offset is on the floor plans, and it's 4 inches right now. Cantilevers off the side, 4 inches.
Cantilevers?
Yeah, because that's why we limited it to 4 inches, enough to give a break on that plane. Plus, we're painting it an accent color, so it gives you some relief to that long wall.
Okay, so it's recessed 4 inches from the adjacent plane.
No, it sticks beyond 4 inches of the plane of the wall.
Oh, it sticks out. Okay, and does that impinge on the reciprocal easement?
It encroaches into the reciprocal easement, that 4 inches. However, it's not a setback issue because it doesn't come to the ground. A couple of our quick items in the interest of time. The plan 1, you brought up about a direct access for the bathroom. If you look at the floor plan in that loft, there's a secondary bath on the other side of that loft that allows both a bedroom at the back of the house to utilize that bathroom and anybody in the loft.
Good, I just see that. Thank you.
Okay. Another item I wanted to bring up, and Brad, I think, did a good job of explaining the 1-story versus the 2-story, but I do want to mention that on the 2-story homes, the 40-foot lots, we have intentionally set the second floor massing back and held that back from the street edge. Recognizing that we have 1-story homes across the street, it just didn't feel appropriate to stack that massing towards the front. So we've put that massing, kind of centered it in the middle of the house. So you get some relief at the front side and you get some relief at the back side, which is facing the open green space. The square footages, I just want to point out too, Edward, there may be some typos in your presentation. Our 40-foot product is larger, being that it's 2-story. Its square footage ranges from about 2,200 square feet to 2,800 square feet. And the 1-story product, the 45-foot wide product, ranges from about 1,700 square feet to 2,000 square feet. The 2-story product, as I mentioned, all backs up to open green space. So all of those will have, the outdoor living and the spool area will be towards the back of the house. where on the one-story product, the 45s, we have 3 different floor plans, and each one of those floor plans offers the spool in a different location. One is towards the front, one is towards the rear, and one is right in the middle.
Are you using, I love seeing your use of the 0 lot line, reciprocal use easement here. Are you using that on just the 40-foot parcels, or are you using it on both?
Both products use that.
It was very successful in a development I'm aware of. Made the lot secure.
Yeah, I think I agree. It gives you a nice side yard. You pick up an extra 5 feet of usable space, and it turns what otherwise would be 2 sort of dead side yards, 5 feet on each side. Now you have one that's much more active, and you can do something with it.
As you're going through your presentation, do people have any questions on any of the pages as you've looked through it?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say I really appreciate the time that the subcommittee put into going through the details, and I think Commissioner Hirschbein deserves a round of applause. And I am going to defer to the work that they did because this is more their area of expertise.
I have some questions if other people don't, and they're ones I've asked at other meetings. What I didn't see here was the gate that leads out to the exclusive use, through the exclusive use common area to the olive grove. And on some of the first houses I looked at, they had not looked at a path of travel and then just put the pool in front of it and left no way for the residents to really get down through that exclusive use area to the walking paths. Is that, it's not showing on your drawings. It's something that I do want to see in these projects. Have you thought about that, and how are you handling that?
Yeah, I can respond to that. So yes, I would agree with you. We've kind of learned our lesson. Those fences, so for the first 200 or so units that are either fully constructed or under construction now, those that back to the open space do all have gates on them. In some instances, those gates do not align with a reasonable walking path. I think those gates are approved by this commission. Ultimately, they're installed by the builder. And so it's been an education process for us as developers to work with the builders. I think we're better informed going forward. So I think what we'll do with the next submittal to ARC, if that's the committee's recommendation, is we'll adjust the drawings to reflect the location of the gates away from the pools to the extent that there's a pool in the rear yard.
Thank you. The only other thing I looked at was Plan 1B, and it's basically the combination of sort of the metal, there's sort of a metal element, and then the roof lines, it just looks busy to me. And it's something I would like the ARC to look at a little bit. It is page 20, A21, and it's the front elevation.
We actually addressed that one in our comments. I'd like to make sure ARC has a look, is guided to look at that as well.
So we have a couple of things we've asked the ARC so far to take a look at, if staff is taking them down. I know you mentioned 1 or 2 other things in your comments. Michael, were there any others that you want them to still look at?
No, I didn't see anything. I just want to make sure that ARC has the opportunity to review the changes that were made and make sure they're happy with it. I really deferred to them on a lot of the discussion points. So I think they're capable of doing that. I just wanted to ask the developer, though, about the public comment we had about that gate. Was there merit to that comment, or is it something that you feel is not necessary?
Well, I'm happy to address it. I think it's outside the context of this conversation, only because it's part of the larger approval for the project, and so in the sense that the larger Maryland project has an approval, there are conditions of approval that go along with that, and we have constructed our business plan to conform with that. And if you may recall, because I believe Commissioner Hirschbein, you were involved in our original kind of re-entitlement efforts. We had received some pushback from our neighbors to the southeast that they were concerned there was going to be a bunch of construction traffic if we were to open up that gate. So we agreed to, this is not a condition of the project per se, but we agreed on the record that we wouldn't open up that facility until the Sunrise extension was finally made and connected. So there was a thoroughfare that you could loop around the top of our project, and then there'll be more residents that were in the project that then would utilize that south gate. So that's how we constructed our business plan, and that's what we've been operating under.
When do you expect the Sunrise Parkway to be complete?
And that is a conditioned part of the project, and as the conditions read, that needs to be open by the time the 619th certificate of occupancy is issued at the site, which is roughly halfway through the project. And we're, I would say, roughly a quarter of the way through the project, at least from a single family perspective currently.
Thank you.
I was out at Maryland at a community police meeting, and it was an issue that got raised by the community while I was there. A basic safety concern about making that U-turn in Indian. I know you've constructed, just to say to you, it is a very general concern of the people who've bought in.
Yes, and believe me, we've heard it, and we're evaluating that and that relative to the commitments we made earlier on the record. I will say, and I know it's not as convenient, but our northerly gate is now signalized, which was also a condition that we satisfied. So if you've been there, you notice that the intersection of Indian and Sunrise is signalized. So I understand that if you live on the south side of the project, to drive all the way through the north and then make a left onto Sunrise and a left onto Indian is a longer way to go. But if safety is the primary concern, then that sort of obviates that concern, or at least moderates it.
Are there other questions on the documents themselves? There's one other that is somewhat out of the purview too, but it's a question for you. We had received complaints, I think the last time Woodbridge came in for an additional 40 or 50 units about the windows, and those complaints, there are complaints about the quality of the windows that have been used and the materials not being sufficient to stop the sand intrusion. And just with these, is there anything that you can do? And I understand it's a wind tunnel sometimes, to make us comfortable that the quality of the materials you're going to use will withstand the wind out there?
I mean, I'm not a window expert. We don't have a window expert on this call. I will say we've consulted with our builders and Woodbridge in particular to make sure that there were no installation errors. We've also talked to them about the manufacturers they used versus the ones that we've considered in these cases. They're not markedly dissimilar. I know that there's been the idea that if we did some aluminum type windows, that might be a better product. To be frank, that's not a product that's readily available anymore. And frankly, we're talking about 40s kind of technology, which has a certain look and feel, but going back to that is not going to solve the problem. So, part of it's basic upkeep. Part of it's just recognizing, yes, that the climatic conditions here are such that at times no matter what you do, hurricane windows, what have you, aren't going to stop all the blowing dust. And notwithstanding the fact that, we're in Southern California, and the notion that we would try to import a technology that is frankly rarely implemented even in, South Florida.
I believe this commission changed the requirements from the windows and no longer required aluminum. All I'm asking is, can you give us some assurances that you're looking at both the way the windows are installed and the windows themselves to protect?
Yes. Yeah. So yes, if
you can.
Yeah. So we are absolutely looking into that issue. We're aware of the concern. We will work with the builder to ensure that the windows are installed properly, that they're properly rated, that they're aware of the issue going in. Part of this, I won't say it will resolve itself over time, but as more units are added and the olive trees grow, then some of those windy conditions, maybe not on the windiest days, but on more mild days, those will dissipate over time because everything will mature and there'll just be more, things in the way to break up the wind and hopefully knock down some of that dust that's blowing around. And it's frankly unsurprising that some of the early complaints were from the Woodbridge homes because they were facing those rear yards were facing immediately to the west, and there was nothing to stop. The olive trees were a foot tall, and there were no other homes up, so they were bearing the full brunt of that early on. So as new homes are added and the trees grow, like I said, that should moderate to some extent.
So we've stopped your architect's presentation. I'm getting a sense that the commission does not need to hear it, that we're really at a point of approving this. I haven't heard major concerns about the work that was done. I haven't heard any concerns about the work that was done. So crafting a motion, Commissioner Hirschbein, you wanted to make sure that ARC was comfortable with the changes that were requested by the subcommittee, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to make sure that they took a look at, I think that was Plan B1, am I correct? And
you're at page 21.
Plan 1B.
1B and page 21.
21, correct.
And just that you incorporate into what you send to ARC, the gates and the path of travel through the exclusive use common area.
Yes.
So those are the only things that I've heard. Commissioner Hirschbein, do you want to make the motion?
Yes, I'll make it with those directions to ARC.
And is there a seconder of the motion? Not seeing one, I'll second it. Can you call the roll?
Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yes.
Chairwoman?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Irvin?
I just want to say thank you, Michael, for your hard work, and thank you for everyone, and a yes for me.
Okay. Commissioner Miller? Was that a yes? Okay. Commissioner Maruzzi?
Yes.
And Vice Chair Roberts?
Yeah, thank you to the subcommittee for your work on this. It was clear that it was much easier for us now. So thank you and yes.
Motion carries.
And I had the pleasure of going to your community room or to your center for a meeting, and it's gorgeous.
Thank you very much. Yes, we're very proud of it. And we just need to get more homes up so we can activate it more fully. So, but yes, we're happy to host the occasional event. In fact, we have a monitors event, I think, scheduled for Friday, which I understand Commissioner Hirschbein may attend. So hope you enjoy it, and encourage everybody to come out and visit when they have the chance.
That event is Friday at what time?
Friday evening, and I wish I had the time at the tip of my fingers, but unless Commissioner Hirschbein knows, I want to say it's probably 5 o'clock, but I can circle back with Edward and provide him the information if you'd like.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we'll verify the time and email the commissioners on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So moving right along, we are in Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments. Commissioner Hirschbein.
Yeah, I'll make it quick. I, for my question, had concerns about the sequel report that we were asked to review and the response from Fish and Wildlife. And there were previous reports that had other what might be considered problem, mainly that housing project just to the west of Vaughn's, when we had to rely on the testimony of concerned biologists about the possibility that there were endangered species on the site, and we had to craft conditions around that, separate from a sequel report that we had gotten. And I would just like staff to review CEQA consultants and maybe to the possibility of selecting other ones.
I do.
Do you want me to respond, Madam Chair? Oh, sorry.
It isn't the consultants, I think it's the standards. And I would like us to be more in line with Fish and Wildlife.
Well, I mean, there was that problem with the Vaughn's, I don't know the name, remember the name of it. Some outside biologist came and told us these problems. The CEQA consultant just, I don't know if she completely ignored them, but she certainly didn't call it out as an issue. And then I mean, we're not with that, but we started crafting these conditions around what this outside biologist was telling us. And I just think that speaks to maybe the quality of the reports we're getting, and maybe staff should be looking at other consultants.
So thank you for that feedback. I need to look into this issue a little bit more. I'm not familiar with the other project that you're referencing. I do know that there can be sort of sometimes a disconnect between the feedback we're getting from an agency, and I'm not saying this is what happened, but the requirements of CEQA. And my understanding of what the consultant was speaking to today was that was the case in this situation. Was CEQA requires a certain standard of review and certain responses, and the comments that we received potentially went beyond that. And so, we can certainly sort of flesh that out a little bit with Fish and Game and with the consultants to see where that disconnect is occurring and make sure that we're flagging those issues more clearly. On the issue of consultants, I will say, we have a limited pot or a little limited availability of consultants who are willing to take on our work at this point. So that is a more challenging discussion, but it's certainly something that's top of mind for us because, we are having difficulty getting the consultants that we have historically used to agree to take our work on. So that, I'm afraid, is a more difficult solution. So I just want to put that on your radar as something that we're sorting through outside of this particular issue that isn't necessarily readily available to us.
It's a difficult problem. That being, Commissioner.
Yes. A comment and a question. The comment is that I'm noticing in our staff reports that deal with residential or new residential development, when we talk about compatibility with the general plan, we just leave out the housing element of the general plan. And I would like to ask if staff can, in their staff reports, indicate when there's a new development, how many units in that income range are still needed, how many, if any, what progress we've made towards those, just so we can keep track of this, so that we know when we approve something that we don't want to approve everything above moderate and then be stuck with not having enough land left over to meet our RENA allocation for lower income categories. So I'd like staff to at least include that information in our staff report. That's my request. And my question is, where are we on the update of the housing element? I know it went to the state and came back, and I think it went to the state again. So I'm wondering what the status of the, housing element update, not the, we have one in place. But.
It went to the state, it came back, it went back, and we're sort of in a bit of a standoff is not the right word, but I will say that the state is continuing to take a fairly rigid and firm position on our ability to regulate group homes specifically, and they are sort of asking us to go beyond what we believe is required by state law in terms of permitting them essentially as of right in all instances. And I think it's certainly the city's position that we be very supportive and accommodating of group home facilities. But I think historically we've had some parameters around when they reach a certain threshold or provide a certain level of service, how we consider those in terms of their compatibility with neighborhoods. That's one of the items we're working through with them. Where it is currently at is we have requested multiple times for additional information from them on how we might sort of work through that issue, as well as how we direct funding to affordable housing, particularly in some of our disadvantaged communities. And we are not getting much information back from them, unfortunately, on how to work through those issues to make sure that we are compliant. I understand that many municipalities throughout the state are in the same boat, and I think HCD is just really bogged down. So we're continuing to push them on it. We're continuing to request information that will allow us to address the comments that they continue to raise, but we're sort of in a bit of a holding pattern, I'll say that. So what we are hoping to do is get that resolved by the end of the year and certainly come back early next year with an update on it.
Do we face any penalties for not having an approved housing element?
I don't believe that we do. And again, I believe the majority of cities throughout the state that are in this process are in the same boat. A lot of them are past due. And I think a lot of them are because of delays at HCD. So I would certainly hope that we do not, but I can confirm
that. Thank you for the update.
Anything else? The planning director's report.
That sort of covers what I was going to talk about. We have just two upcoming items just to put on your radar. Casa Verona is going to, so you recently considered Casa Verona at your last meeting. I believe it's going to the city council on Monday evening. And I'm flagging that simply because it will be the first time city council is now seeing one of these R1E zone changes. So we'll see how that conversation goes, but I hope that they'll be excited about it. And finally, we're working through something that the city council had requested. I'm not sure how involved you all had been with it. Flynn will be actually presenting at the next meeting some proposed changes to daycare and childcare uses. And so the objective here is to remove barriers to those uses. Currently, in a lot of instances, they require a CUP or a land use permit, which adds obviously additional time and cost to what can sometimes be a very small operation. And so we want to encourage those to locate more freely throughout the city without a lot of barriers. I don't have much more information on exactly what will be proposed beyond that at this point in time, but that will be presented to you for consideration at the next meeting. That's it from me.
Will come to us?
Yes.
Good. Something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I think the lot splits are going to city council, aren't they?
On Monday as well. Yes, that's no. On the following meeting. Yeah. I'm sorry. You're right. On Monday, lot splits and Casa Verona are both going to council on Monday.
Thank you. At this point, I think it's time to adjourn, and this meeting will be adjourned until 5:30 on Wednesday, October 26th. Have a nice 2 weeks, everyone.